Pete? One second.
Okay, the meeting will now come to order. We'll begin with introduction of members and seating of alternates, and we'll begin with town staff.
Dawn Geit, Recording Secretary.
Dan Beret, Town Planner.
Okay, and I believe we have Carrie Olson on Zoom. Carrie, are you there?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, she'll be joining us momentarily. So we'll begin with introduction of commission members, starting on my far left.
Tom Bransfield.
Victoria Chet.
Bob Ellsworth.
Robert Taylor.
Jen Talone.
Carolyn Freeman.
Joe Spada.
Okay, we will not be seating any alternates tonight. So may I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented,
So
please?
moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, the agenda is accepted as presented. Just a quick note about meeting procedures. We will have a 5-minute speaking limit for members of the public. After every member of the public who wishes to speak has done so, we'll then loop around and you may again sign up for another 5-minute speech. We do have a sign-up sheet over here to my left, right over to Dan's left. So if you do wish to speak at some point during the meeting, please sign up on that sheet. That's who we'll be calling speakers from. And I would just ask that all comments and discussion be kept on topic in the interest of time. So we will move on then to, the sequence of events. I thought this might be important just to cover. So we will be asking the applicant to present his proposed changes, proposed site. Dan will then address some questions that were raised at our last special meeting. And then any questions that commission members have, we will entertain those questions, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments from members of the public. So this is a special meeting, public hearing for application 23-17, 69 Marlborough Street, request for special permit modification, application and property of BRT DeMarco, PTP LLC, map 19, lot 68, zone B2, B3, and TCBD. So this is a continuation of a prior meeting, so the public hearing is open. And Dan, would you like to begin with a presentation?
Please. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, so since the last meeting, we had a couple of changes to the proposal. One had to do with the hospitality use in the E building that was removed due to comment about the definition of hotel that referenced the term building, and it was seemingly complicating the issue, so we made modifications to remove that, which Steve Sullivan, the civil engineer, and the architect will walk through how that changes a few things. It manifests itself in the phasing plan and in how many age-restricted apartments end up being in E. It goes from basically 17 down to 11. But I think what I'd like to do is just highlight a couple of things that were newly added. A use narrative that gave a little more description of the independent living operations. And then there was a phasing narrative that added to some of the tables that went in. But I think that's just kind of the high level changes. But I'd like to pass the baton to Steve for a few minutes, let him and then Maura, the architect, go through, and then I'll come up and address any questions. So thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Steve Sullivan, professional engineer with CCA LLC out of Brookfield, Connecticut. If they can just pull up the CCA plan. everyone see that? Or should we? Okay. So as the applicant just mentioned, we eliminated the hotel hospitality use, which was in Building E. And that space went back to regular apartments. So there'll be 6 apartments in that space. So we have 99 units, which is what was originally planned for Building E. In Building A, the 17 age-restricted was reduced to 11, so that gets us at the 240 maximum apartments for the site. In the space of those 6 units that were age-restricted, that was transferred to independent living units and the healthcare, under the healthcare institution use. So the independent living units went from 102 to 108 units. We did get some review comments from the town engineer, and we did respond to the comments. After some back and forth with the town engineer, we are at a change in the parking waiver. It was reduced from 19.5% to 17.03%, and those were based on the recommendations of the town engineer regarding the parking analysis. Also, we made a couple modifications to the stormwater infiltration galleries that are not built yet. Those are the last remaining stormwater systems that still have to be built. They're basically behind Building A and up in the parking lot of the future parking lot of B1, B2. And then lastly, we made a modification to the phasing. Essentially, we moved Sage House, which is Building C, from Phase 1 to Phase 3. And I think the applicant can elaborate and has elaborated in his phasing narrative that was submitted to the commission. Looking at the memorandum from the town engineer, he seems satisfied with the changes we've made, and so I can clarify things or answer any questions the commission may have.
Okay, any questions at this point?
Well, I guess I have a question.
Sure.
Why would we have to go from 17 to 11 for restricted age units?
Because we can't have more than 240 age-restricted or non-age-restricted units. So since we got rid of the hospitality units, which were not, they were a hotel, that was a hotel, since we got rid of that use, that space went back to 6 apartments, and so we had to reduce the age-restricted from 17 to 11 to ensure we're at 240.
And the stormwater changes?
Yeah, so we just changed the gallery type for, there's 2 components. There's a water quality component and then a detention component. And so we changed the gallery type for those components by Building A, and then up here by Building B1.
For what purpose?
Just for volume, additional volume.
Any further questions at this point?
I'm still confused.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I thought the age-restricted units were related to the independent living portion.
No.
So
So,
I don't
don't know if they can
understand
hear
why
me.
we couldn't.
what do you mean?
Well, they went from, it says reduced age-restricted units from 17 to 11. And so
So the 6 proposed hotel units?
I understand that. So you're saying if you just added them back in, they'd be over 240
Correct.
for regular?
Yeah, so basically, they shifted the 6 units that were proposed for the hotel into the healthcare institution.
So could we add age-restricted units to the independent
There were 17 originally proposed,
Right,
right? And because those 6 hotel rooms were eliminated, they had to reduce the number of apartments by 6. So they reduced that from 1711, that 6, and then that remaining area was then absorbed by the healthcare institution in their proposal.
okay.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I think I'm probably thinking about it too.
Okay, but if you're still unsure, we can go through that more.
No, I think I got
Okay.
it.
Well, I'm kind of confused about that too, but can you say how many units are there in the independent living? How many apartments they are apartments? How many apartments are there that are just independent living?
That's 108, and that's all in Building A.
Okay. And so when I looked at the thing, it looks as though the space could have 130 apartments in it, but there were 10 apartments that were taken out for the amenities associated with independent living, and then there were 8 apartments taken out for the restaurant. So that left 112 apartments in independent living, but somehow or another.
So Chantel, can I ask, on the 130, is your reference there to Building F?
Yeah,
Okay, so in Building F, there's 10,000 square feet of commercial. So in that same volume, you still have that component in addition?
okay,
Okay.
okay, so that's what the difference is.
Yeah,
All right.
and if it helps at all, we're back to kind of no changes to E or F. That's kind of where we landed with the removal of the hospitality use. So we're here really saying E and F are the same as they ever were. And now A and B are the focal points and then the phasing plan. So there were always 11 residential units in Building A, if that helps. And there still are. We just chose to add an age restriction to those 11 that was not ever in the prior proposals because of the use of the rest of the building.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Further questions for Steve at this point?
Would it be Dan or Steve that talk about the change to the phasing plan?
Yeah, I think I would take that on. Do we mind if we?
I can wait.
Oh, no, great. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll show kind of what the before and after is with some level of detail, which will be part of this. Steve, did you have more that you wanted to cover, or you? Okay, you're good. Okay, so then if we can show the architecturals, and then I can dive into phasing. How's that? Okay.
If we could look at the architectural slides, thanks, and page 13. Most of this presentation is what we looked at last time. I won't torture you.
Can you just wait 1 second? I won't
Sure.
be able- It's really hard to see.
Oh, yeah, right?
You said page 13?
Yes, the title of it is Building A, Rooftop Restaurant, Active Adult Living, and Independent Living.
It's not in your main,
Oh, it's in this, is that a trick?
it's not in that packet. Yeah, I don't think they have this.
Oh, they don't have a hard
They don't have
copy
a
of
hard
it?
copy of this, no.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Is it from last time?
I won't make you turn around too long. This is a short presentation. Basically, what this plan is showing, on the left, the purple is the restaurant. On the right, the peach is the age-restricted. And at the top and left, that's independent living. And where I have the red area highlighted, right of center, that had been age-restricted, and it's now independent living. That's the architectural change to the Building A. When we moved the hotel rooms, we got rid of the hotel rooms at E, and we made these units circled in red into independent living at Building A. That's it for architecture. Thanks.
All right, I'm back. So if we pull up the phasing narrative, I'm not sure it's in the projection stuff, but it's more of a narrative. I can read parts of it. But what we were looking to do, because some of the percentages are in the CCA plans, the ones that show how many square feet and just balance what's being delivered in each phase. So in our prior discussion, we had had Sage in phase one. That was the difference between today and our last meeting. We had already taken the CVS site, and because we were trying to take that from 13,000 square feet to 32,000 square feet in the new Gildersleeve building, that was a significant add that would work in conjunction with the A building. I don't know if we recall, I was talking about having our construction offices move to the Sage building, and they have, when the site trailer left, and I don't, if everybody's been out to the site, the whole front of the Brainerd House area is being finished now, where that pool area has gone in. If you look at the concrete rectangle there that's in between the E building and Brainerd.
Excuse me, can you pull up the whole complex?
Oh yeah, we can do that, sure. If we can pull up CCA's plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so what we have right now, what I was referring to a second ago is this area here is where the pool is being built, and so the concrete work for the walls for the overall pool area, not the pool itself. The pool itself is inside those walls. That's all been formed, and so if you drive by the site, you'll kind of see this building nearly complete, the foundation walls here, and then where those construction trailers are had been in the front, you have finish work now occurring. So this right here, this foundation pad site for the gazebo is in, so that's another piece of finish work. And then as you go across the site, then the Starbucks building is up and ready to go for them to start their interior fit up. So what the proposed phase one is, and do you remember what page it was, Steve, the phasing plan? It actually doesn't, it's not necessary to go to it. I can kind of outline it. So Hassan North, which is building E right here, is one phase one building. Brainerd House is the other, and the last would be the Starbucks building. So the proposal essentially has us with one historic building per phase. So this whole thing would be phase one, right? Basically following this outline. And then phase two would involve the Hart Jarvis House and building F, okay? This area here. And then the last remaining piece would be Sage, Gildersleeve, and Aragoni, right, the new A building. So the reason for this, and what we have in that phasing narrative, is that we are actively under construction for all of the phase one and phase two buildings right now. And so the description of where we are, certainly the new roof has gone on the Brainerd House, and the custom windows, and Alan spoke to that at the last hearing, were ordered and are coming in. They were due in August and they're delayed till mid-month, but we expect those to go into the building by the end of September. So that'll bring the exterior shell of that building to a weather-tight condition that allows us to then go inside and start doing things. So that's a necessary piece. The Starbucks building is already a weather-tight shell and ready for tenant fit-up. So the next step that will be visible to the town is Starbucks, and they've applied for the permit, got comments back, replied to comments, and so we expect them to begin construction within the next 30 days. The section next to it is ready for someone else to be leased to. That's about a 1,300 square foot section next to the Starbucks space, but all in the D building, which we've named Beach. So the concept here is to have a way forward that gets as much momentum going on the property as is possible, and that's with the obviously this first building with its leasing office and Starbucks being the things that are most readily developed and opened, and then the Brainerd House will be fit up. So the pool equipment goes into the basement of that building. If anybody has questions about what we're doing on each one of Brainerd and Hart Jarvis, we do have floor plans if you'd like to go through any of that. But the pool equipment is in the basement. The bathrooms to service the pool area are on the near wing of the Brainerd House. So you come in right off it. So this is the pool area. And there's a direct connection into that east wing of the Brainerd House for pool bathrooms. Then coming in the front door of the Brainerd House, there's like a game room and other like fun things on that first level. So that just is a system-wide or community-wide amenity. So essentially, because we feel strongly, and this was feedback from the leasing folks, we think we're going to get a higher quality restaurant by leasing this when B and A are being developed. And so having Sage brought to market, I think I know I mentioned it in prior meetings, but we moved the construction personnel into that location to build out the rest of the project from, because we feel we'll get such a higher quality tenant in Sage later. So that's part of the thinking also that goes into moving it into phase 3. So I think we have kind of a continuous effort. Again, this wing of building F, that 10,000, I think 242 square feet, we do have one prospective tenant on that building. Did somebody say something? Oh, okay. So in this building, there's 10,000 some odd square feet. We have a physical therapy tenant lined up for that. That's the second tenant after Starbucks that we have in the queue. And we're just looking to get more. So the strategy here is to, as quickly as possible, get this perimeter opened up and operating, right? And I don't know if any of the commissioners or anyone else that I invited to drive kind of in the main entrance and just kind of do a loop, see the Hart Jarvis house there. It has its new roof, and it has, they were doing shop drawings on the window openings. So the same Marvin windows that are being made custom and delivered for the Brainerd House are going to, that same process gets applied to Hart Jarvis now. And then we have 8 office suites that we intend to operate in Hart Jarvis, so that's all coming along. But yeah, really just kind of seeing this living and breathing. There's a fence along this southern wall here. I see stair towers coming off of the foundation of F, right? That's recent activity since we were here last. This entrance off of Main Street is, is built so you can kind of come through. So it is easier to kind of visualize the spaces, right, associated with the remaining phases of development. So this space right here and this, is something that's easier to see in the field than it was prior. This parking lot between E and F is slated to be paved in the month of September. So that'll make this whole thing feel a little more cohesive. But our focus right now on phase 1 to open and bring vibrancy and life to the whole thing is all about this section right now. So surrounding Brainerd and then the Hassan North building.
And where is the leasing office?
That is right inside that, about that location on the end cap of that building on the ground level of E. Okay.
So my question is about the percentages of commercial and non-commercial. It seems like a lot of the commercial has been pushed to the third phase. I feel, based on my interpretation, you moved Sage and that's commercial, and then I believe you're considering independent living as commercial, and that's in the third phase. So I'm just wondering how that changes all of the percentages that I've seen a lot of percentages over the last number of meetings, so I'm curious as to how that works out.
Yeah, no, definitely. So in terms of that, we have, it says Brainerd Place Summary Revision 8/22/2024. That's just an exhibit, but it kind of adds up those spaces. So if we go and we look at the commercial spaces across the buildings that aren't in that last phase, right? So it would be Beach, Hassan North, Hassan South, Brainerd, Hart Jarvis, right? I don't know if you have that exhibit. Oh, yes, yeah, you're looking at it, perfect. Okay, so the first 3 lines are phase 3 lines now, right, in that left column under commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And then the remainder, which I would say 17, it's about 26,000. I would say that's half an Adams Plaza, if that helps any, general reference. I think that's about a 50,000 square foot commercial plaza. So in these first 2 phases, we're still, give or take, 27,000 square feet of office, retail, restaurant in that allocation. I agree that the independent living at 121,000 throws off all these percentage calculations, right? It might make that a little distracting, but the before and after on Gildersleeve, for example, right, where we're taking the CVS from about 13,000 to those 32,000 square feet. It doesn't show before and after because that table you're looking at is the after, but I think that was something that we've probably spent a fair bit of time on in terms of just what we could do to maximize the opportunity and likelihood of having a successful leasing effort by having 16,000 square feet of that on the retail ground level and then office to the same amount on the store area above. So this is our just kind of taking in the market, and in the same way that I invited you and the public to drive through the site, it's the same thing with the commercial leasing exercise. It's like, hey, come on down, take a look. You're about to have a Starbucks across this paved parking lot, right? It is nothing like standing product. It's a hard way to do it, but it's where we are. And so we're just pushing this boulder uphill as fast as we can, so.
Further questions for Dan at this point?
Dan?
Yep.
The building B, being in phase 3.
Yep.
Why would you not consider moving that?
Moving building B earlier?
Yeah.
So I think that basically, because we're going as fast as we can, and I mean that in terms of physically building out the site and also financing the different rounds, like we can't close the financing on F without having all of this worked out in this process. That's sort of embedded in the phasing narrative, which is kind of like we can't frame F, right? Because we can't get the financing for it unless we have a site that overall makes sense. And so we've gotten, we've got buy-in on stepping up and doing the B building, right, as fast as we possibly can. And so the timeline on that is really, one thing that happens is we go back and forth with, say, the selectmen from a tax incentive side of things, and then we go through the regulations with this commission. And so I sometimes have to think who I was talking to when, so forgive me for that. But the idea was that we couldn't open this building without having this B building built, and that's to the point of where, say, Starbucks is right now. So Starbucks, we would say, is a delivered commercial building in that it's a white box that can be finished by a tenant. We've made all the decisions we can make with the hope of getting a tenant, and then it stops. So we will go into that for A and B in terms of the pacing of this. We would just begin that next year. So, and that's as fast as I can get financing for it, frankly.
Could you just speak a little more into the mic?
Oh.
Did I hear you say in there that you would be building B before A? In order to get the funding for A, you would need to build B.
Yeah.
So even though they're in phase 3, the building B will be built first in phase 3. Is that the intention?
It'll be with it, and basically, here's the hook, and I'm just going to throw it all out there. We've gone through this with different institutions, and the only way we can get financing for the B building is with the A building, right? You're saying, hey, here's something that we can show will cash flow, and in order to do it, the town has required, right, for the tax incentive and other things, that we also do B. And we can't open A without B, so it'll be at the same time. It won't be in series. The same way we're doing a lot of things at once, right now, where we started F last year, and we're just going vertical off of that foundation as fast as we can. But it'll be the same exercise with those two going at the same time. What will happen between now and then on phase 3 work is we'll continue this exercise that we started at Brainerd and then rolled into Hart Jarvis. That'll continue into the roof of Sage and the exterior openings, the windows and doors, because the other interconnection with the selectmen is between the opening of F. We can't open F without having the exteriors of all 3 historic buildings together. So there's been a lot of collaboration for like, okay, how can we get to each milestone and then have new set of options? And I think that the thing that we spent a lot of time working on so that we could show people that these 2 buildings, right, Brainerd, because this is part of the conversation with somebody who says, I want to move my business to Brainerd Place, or I want to set up a store or whatever else. It's what is going to be incomplete around here. And so we can now say, because we have this plan that works and we've got all the money lined up for, is we're the user of Brainerd. So that first level is that community amenity. There are some co-working spaces on the top level. So the second floor is, at least in part, going to offer, we're going to have office suites like the Hart Jarvis house. But I think that the thing that has been progress in the last 3 months is coming to the conclusion that we can build those uses on spec without a customer and with an office, then we'll lease it to someone. And we have 8 different units in Hart Jarvis and maybe 4 in the top of Brainerd. So we've just been cobbling this all together, and we're market making. I mean, that's the bottom line, and we're going as fast as we can.
So you have 12, sorry.
Oh, sure.
You have 12 office units between Brainerd and Hart Jarvis.
Yes, the 8 in Hart Jarvis, and then up to 4 in Brainerd, because the top of Brainerd we may keep as something that isn't discreetly leased to anyone. That might be just something that people can come and go from the broader apartment community. So we'll decide that later. But the biggest reason I bring it up is to the extent we are the end user and operator of a piece of real estate, then we can complete it. And so that's been the exercise all along in the puzzle on this, is how much and how fast can we get these things done so that they're absolutely together. And so the phase 1 and phase 2 plan, with the site plan modification, we can do phase 1 and phase 2, and next year be financing phase 3 and going at it in the spring. That's the plan.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So do you have timelines for each of these phases? I heard, next year
Sure.
start.
Sure. So basically, I would expect Brainerd to be operating fully in the first quarter, based on how long it'll take to do the interior fit up, because we'll have the exterior together now. And then I would say we're 3 months behind that on Hart Jarvis. This is all give or take, but one of the things that we were a little slow out of the gates on was getting on the same page about what the review process was for a building permit for the inside of Brainerd, for example. And so we ended up taking the same methodology, and this is very reasonable, and the back and forth with the town has been, I think everybody focused on the same goal, which is getting it done. But we went round and round a little bit on Brainerd and then said, okay, hey, let's step back. And Maura took and ran a process that was done for the larger buildings. And you typically wouldn't do that for smaller buildings, but it seemed to be the way to get everybody on the same page. So we took what we wanted to do on the inside of the Brainerd house, ran it through an International Code Council review, so that there was another opinion beyond our local architects, because we have Maura, we have Allen, we have the ICC, and we have the state. So then by the time we get to the town's building official review and fire marshal review, it's been pretty well worked over and looked at, and then people are more comfortable. But we did lose some time on getting out of the gates with Brainerd, trying to figure out that methodology. But because I think we've gotten there, then we're applying that to Hart Jarvis, and we're moving 3 times faster on that building than we were on Brainerd. And now on Sage, Sage is just something where I can commit to progressing the exteriors in the same way that we did the first 2 historic. And the interior, though, I think is going to be very much tenant-driven. But Sage is one thing that, and Alan can testify to this, Sage was really chopped up inside by the previous users in the hospital use, so it's really just down to the studs. It's a little bit of a different setup than the other 2.
So I guess I'm just curious, like, when do you think phase 1? Are you saying phase 1, the first quarter of 2025, or was it just?
Yeah, I mean,
Brainerd?
basically I just want to kind of lay out what milestones we can reach, right, with certainty. We have Starbucks, so we expect them to open, 16 weeks after they start fitting up the space. That's their typical construction timeline. But we could have a dark space next to Starbucks that we're trying to lease, and it'll depend on when someone comes along and says, I want to put my store there. So I can't say when that gets fit up, but it's ready for market, right? And that we've reached that milestone today. The Brainerd and Hart Jarvis, yeah, those are things I was trying to kind of give you some color on it, where we're the users at the end of the day, even though we're not going to have our offices there, but we are going to create these discrete rentable units in the same way that an apartment would be offered to the market as a discrete unit. And so you can create that, take the leasing risk, because it's diversified across a bunch of people. I think that will bring life to the Hart Jarvis house much faster than if we said, hey, let's see when some tenant comes in and wants the historic building, and do they want the top floor, do they want the lower floor? And it just could take a long time. And so I was happy when the team worked out a solution that allowed us to just finish the thing. So, but to answer your question on the timing, it's ongoing, right? So these are things that phase 1 and 2 can be done next year, both phases, frankly. I mean, we got to rock and roll on F, but with that foundation in already, those stair towers up, it can happen that fast. you got to pad it by another 6 months or something to kind of say this is what's going on. But I don't think we're not in the same situation as years ago when we were just trying to get started. There was tons of infrastructure. The whole table had to be set in order to be building. Now we're fleshing out buildings, and it's a more exciting, time. And certainly when you have people living there and that occupancy and that there's a little bit of commercial hesitancy until it's open and operating. So every month improves the hand for the commercial leasing side of things. So go ahead.
On that,
Please.
on that note, Dan, the perspectives, do you have any projected tenants that you're looking at? Some kind of glimmer of hope that you're going to have some commercial space in there?
Yeah. Actually, there's interest in the rooftop restaurant. That is, and I'll tell you, like multiple parties, I can't speak to whom, but I can say that is something that is a hook. And that was what we were trying to create, which is how do we put something out there that's just different, right? It's not available in the region, as opposed to here's X square feet on this such and such intersection. You by going up and showing those views, it's a differentiated experience that we think is a regional draw.
But the attention that you're getting, is it positive? You're getting
a lot
absolutely. Of interest in it now?
Well, in that component, right? Yeah. The rest of it, the CBRE, the leasing agent says, we have small enough units. What they need to be able to say to someone to be successful leasing it is when we might be able to deliver it. And we can't say anything if it's not approved, right? And so that's where this is becoming more urgent all the time, because people are looking at it and saying, what can you do? And we say, well, ask us again in a month, because we think we'll be approved to actually build it. But right now, you can only push so far when the standing approval right now is a pretty ugly looking CVS building on the corner, right? And it doesn't really help until we complete a process, so.
Have you considered if you have so much interest in a rooftop restaurant, have you considered placing a second one on the site?
I don't think so. I mean, no, to answer your question, no, we haven't, because we'd be just so thrilled to have one. And there's a lot that, no, I know, but there's a lot that went into the design of that. Like Maura's plan, if we just in the two-dimensional site plan side of things, we have a dedicated parking lot for that, and its own entrance, own elevator. I mean, there's so much that went into the design of the A building to pull it off at all. It's kind of hard to take the other wing and do that again. I think it's a one-shot deal for this site. So.
You're very committed to having a restaurant in Sage House. I mean, I've heard that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yep. I think that has its own draw for different reasons. I think this terrace here has this unobstructed view of the bridge that is facilitated in part by not having the A building be so long anymore, right? Like those view shed exhibits that we showed. But yeah, I think that this will be an attractive place to hang out, right? Right there, that outside terrace. It doesn't exist there now, but that's what this physical space is. Because this right here, that line right. Oh, this thing crapped out on me. Sorry. Oh, here we go. That line right there is the edge of the house, but the rectangular place below it is an outside terrace, which I think will be lovely. So I guess to your point about multiple restaurants, that is to me the other experience level restaurant, but I'd be happy with a Jersey Mike's next to Starbucks, right? Like just is a restaurant, is it quick service? I don't know, but these are sit down restaurants, the Sage and top of Aragoni.
One more question about this.
No, I'm not catching a flight tonight, so I'm here all night.
Okay. Was there any consideration about putting a hotel in Sage?
No, largely because we think the bottom level of Sage will work as a restaurant, so I don't think we ever really analyzed that. I think the issue with Sage is just how bad the upstairs is, right? Like, it's slated for a very low rent office use, but it's not a lot of square footage. But no, I think we because of that terrace, I guess it's too small a building, I think.
Okay.
Other questions for Dan at this point?
Is this the presentation?
That would conclude our update to the submission. Yep.
I guess I'm still struggling with the definition of this as a healthcare institution. I read our definition in our regulation, and I'm assuming you're applying under the last sentence, which is any multifamily dwelling with units designed for a particular population that requires on-site staff shall be considered an institution.
That's absolutely correct, and I don't know if you saw the use narrative. I can pull out, I think, what the meaty part of that is, if you'd like.
Well, we were given a narrative of what you plan to provide in the
Yep. I think we're talking about the same document.
And it talks about offerings for an independent living facilities, servicing age-restricted populations.
Yep.
Such offerings may change from time to time. So to me, that doesn't read as required, but I have really another question. It's more to Dan and to Carrie. Our regulations define a multifamily dwelling as any building erected or used and designed and intended to be occupied by no more than 4 families living independently of each other. We also have, at the beginning of that section, 2.1, for the use of terms, if the term is defined, where to use it, unless otherwise clearly qualified by the context. There's no context here that changes that.
So that was one of the questions I was gonna respond to.
I have a real issue with this being considered a healthcare institution because it doesn't meet our definition.
So I guess I could address the multifamily question. If you look in the letter of approval for the July 10th regulation change that was sent out and that was done in section 9.17.2 25 healthcare C rather commercial uses, it states that provided, however, that residential dwelling units shall not include beds or units within a healthcare institution. So specifically in the MUD district, that language was placed in there when me and Carrie went over there. So that once someone proposed a healthcare institution, there would be no count of beds or units as defined by
beds or units. I'm talking about, is it in fact a healthcare institution?
So all I'm addressing is the question
I
on the
understand the beds, the rooms, the
So-
commercial space. Does it meet our definition of our current regulation?
So
I question whether it meets that.
So it is the commission's determination whether or not it does meet healthcare institution. I think what needs to be done, I can't tell you whether the level of services meets the definition. That's something that you commission members would question the applicant and decide on your own.
I don't think that he's, I don't.
Is it the level of services that you're questioning?
I'm not going to speak for you.
I'm speaking about 2 things. One is the multifamily dwelling issue in terms of a healthcare institution. I'm assuming that got put in there to allow group homes in the past. And I don't know why it's there, but it's a funny thing to have said, but it's a specific term defined in our regulation. We have other terms for dwellings we have another term for multiple dwelling unit buildings. It's not defined, but it's used in section 9.16, I think.
Yes, so I,
So it doesn't say multi-unit dwelling, it says multi-family dwelling. And it's got a specific definition in our regulation. And our regs say, use it. And there's no, I've looked, there's nothing that allows me to negate that.
so again, me and Carrie felt that the language in 9.17.2 covered the beds as to the uses or
And I'm not
the
questioning
units.
that.
Okay.
Questioning, this all hinges on, is building a healthcare institution?
So-
Doesn't matter how many beds are in it.
Well, so, yes, so,
Well,
the
if it were
the units.
four, I guess it
yeah.
wouldn't be arguing.
Right, yeah, so the units, we feel is covered in the 9.17.2 as to the level of care that's being administered, that's a decision that you'll have to make based on what's
I
presented.
disagree with that, but fine.
Okay.
So Dan, am I to understand that, that
9.17.2.
2
Oh, well, C, yep.
redefines,
Which I've never received.
it's right here. Redefines for the MUD district our definition in the regulations for healthcare institution.
I don't think it redefines, but in the MUD, it qualifies that number of units doesn't, I don't want to say count, but, so once you're proposing a healthcare institution, the number of units based on the language in that is not considered at that point.
And what I'm saying, I'm not questioning any of that. This whole hinges on an approved use would be as a healthcare institution.
Correct.
It has to be a healthcare institution
Correct.
before you can start talking about it being commercial space or whether you count beds or not. And I'm just reading the definition. It's a problem.
Okay.
So I think unless this changes the definition, I think that's where the hiccup is.
Okay.
Is Carrie on Zoom? Can she weigh in on this?
She should be. Carrie, are you there, or is she muted, Pete, or is she there?
She's here and unmuted.
Okay.
I just don't know if she's at her computer at the moment.
Do you want to put a placeholder on this until Carrie returns, and we can go through some of the
I
other items?
could throw something out on an unrelated thing, and then if we get her, then,
If you'd like.
yeah, okay. So I think one thing that is going on thematically, right, is that this mixed-use development reg came in after some of these definitions were written. And so we have all these circles, like even at the beginning of this meeting, there's this referral to the Historic Commission being brought up. But at the same time, I'd like to have Dave come up and actually comment on that for a second, because in the mixed-use development, there's language, and I'll let him kind of explain what our position is on this, because we believe what we have in front of you, just to make this really stark, complies with your regulations and is approvable without any legal issues. So I'll let him explain why.
Could I just preference this, Dave, for you? So this was something I was going to share with the commission. This was brought to my attention about 10 minutes before the meeting began. It's Regulation 10.6.2, and it talks about referral to the Historic District, or Historic Commission, rather, I'm sorry, whenever any change of use on the site is proposed. And then if that is the case, then there's supposed to be a referral 30 days before the public hearing to the commission. So that was something I was going to bring to your attention, and certainly try to get an answer for you. We can certainly hear what the applicant's attorney has to say, though.
Good evening.
Well,
I don't know how to rule on that.
I would like Carrie's input, but
This would be an extension of our presentation, I would think.
Why don't we wait till Carrie can weigh in?
okay. There are,
Just so that we're sure that we're not.
Sure. Sure.
There's just some very clear provisions in the regulations that
Well,
could just
I can go through a couple other things.
I'm not going to give an opinion, I'm just going to point out what,
I can go through a couple other things, and then hopefully Carrie can.
whatever
weigh
your
in.
pleasure is. Okay.
All right, so the other outstanding questions were, Dan touched on the hotel. Based on the definition of hotel, needs to be a building primarily designed for. So you cannot have a mixed-use building with a hotel. So even when people were coming up and saying one floor be a hotel or two, it does not work. The second was on resubmission of a new application or a new special permit rather than a modification. That section in the regulation points to 10.4E that states basically the thought is that that's referring to you can't get a special permit approval and then change what the special approval permit states. So what you gave it without coming back to the commission. And that new application coming back to the commission is the modification. As you've known, we've modified many special permits many times. The way, if you read it the other way, then every single significant change would have to be a new application. So the modification is the new application, not necessarily a whole new application. The other one was on noticing. I spoke with Carrie and our consultant planner. The noticing, there's nothing wrong with the noticing. I also went back and checked what my predecessors did. They noticed things in the Middletown Press as well. And both the last special permit modification and the modification that was done by my predecessor before this, both just simply stated special permit modification. So there's nothing wrong with the noticing. So we'll have to look into certainly the other potentially two questions, depending on what transpires for the rest of the evening. If Carrie is not back up, I will send her a text right now to try to get her there. I don't know if we want to go through other questions by the public, and then we can circle back on these other two issues. Well, I mean,
I think as part of your public comment, please. So let's wait a minute and see if Carrie is responding. If not, then we will move on.
We can get a couple other things out of it. What do we think? I'm sorry. Carrie? We're waiting for Carrie.
Okay, there's something you'd like to
No,
talk about?
I'm
before
just looking at some of the other things that
Oh.
we received and right up there.
Point of order. I've opened up Robert's Rules of Order, which I believe governs the conduct of these commissions.
could you come up and just say your name at the mic, because nobody online can hear you?
Evening, Ed Zernicki from 435 Main Street. I've been following this for some time, and I've been checking some rules with Robert's Rules of Order, which I believe govern your conduct in a meeting such as this. And on this point, in Robert's Rules of Order, a point of order is a way to bring attention to a possible violation of the rules or an improper procedure. When a point is raised, a point of order is raised, the chair is required to make an immediate ruling on the issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
I do not know where Kerry is. So if you'd like to have him, be able to give his point, and then you can have a chance to respond.
Yep, let's do that, if you would, please.
Go up to the podium, Ben.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road, and that gentleman was correct about Robert's rules. If it's a procedural question, and this is in section 10.6.2, literally says procedures, it states this public hearing cannot be open, period. It cannot be opened until the Historical Society, the town shall refer this application to the Historical Society 30 days prior to the public hearing for its review and for its comments. This public hearing could not have been opened. This application needs to be withdrawn, and we need to start over. That's what the rules say. If anybody else interprets it differently, I'd like to see that. Thank you.
We'll let Bob take a moment. I know, Ben, but just...
So this is a continuation from a prior public hearing.
Yes, sir. The original one should not have been opened either. This application cannot be heard until
Ben, if you're gonna, I know, but if you're gonna continue to speak, no one else can hear you and no one else can also, yeah, you gotta get up.
I'll just repeat it. And then can you speak a little bit more loudly?
I will, I apologize. Thank you, Shondo. It essentially says the town needs to refer this to the Historical Society prior to opening the public hearing. Not only that, you have to then receive their comments. They have to review it, and you have to then receive their comments prior to the public hearing. I'm not trying to prolong this. I have enough stuff we could talk about the healthcare institution, but at the end of the day, the rules are the rules. This application should not and could not have been opened, period. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I am not an attorney, so I would like to defer to our legal counsel.
So you'd like an opinion from Kerry on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you like to hear any rebuttal from the opposition, or do you want to just hear what the town attorney has to say?
Well, if we're in violation of opening this public hearing and hearing anything.
I mean, we have to give it an opportunity to respond. I mean, that's been the process here the whole time. I mean, it's completely wrong, and at least let us say that you can have the attorney say whatever, give the opinion, but I think we should have the due process is due process, and he's saying something that's incorrect, and I'd like to explain why.
I'm willing to hear it, yes.
Dan, if we're talking into mics, I can't hear anything right now.
Okay.
Well, I was just saying that due process would require that the applicant have, there's been a statement made about a provision applying to this application, and we as the applicant would just like to respond to that. The 917 regulation is an overlay regulation that was adapted after a lot of these other regulations. The 10.6 is a provision that's talking about adaptive reuse and whether to require it. That ship has sailed in this application. That's one thing. And if you go through the adaptive reuse provisions, you can see that its purpose is to determine whether a site is appropriate for an adaptive reuse. And, because there was an inventory, it references an inventory be conducted, fostering restoration, renovation, and then incorporating it into the new development. There's a procedure which is a separate special permit, What we have here is a MUD special permit, which has its own requirements, has its own provisions. That the very important provision in the MUD regulations is the fact that any zoning regulations which conflict with the MUD regulations are superseded and waived. And this is clearly one of them. There's a specific provision in the special permit provisions for the MUD that say that the board, the commission may refer to the historical society for a determination. The MUD regulations are all about adaptive reuse. You don't get the density bonus without doing the adaptive reuse. So the 10.6 is an entirely irrelevant provision. You have not done anything wrong, and there's absolutely no reason and no basis for a contention that you have to go backwards to do something that would be completely meaningless, because you've already got an application that is adaptively reusing these historic buildings. And if you look at the it's 9.17.6 is where it talks about the commission having the right to request separate studies, stating that the application may be referred to the Historical Society, and it goes on to say that a referral to the Historical Society is not required, and it cannot taint, the failure to do so doesn't constitute any kind of a taint on the application. I'm paraphrasing there, so that, forgive me, but thank you.
Go ahead.
He's wrong, and I'll tell you why. If you read under Section 10.6.2 procedures, when any development or change of use which includes one or more site or structures identified with the HRP, the applicant is required, says it right there, is required to the, is to submit an application to the commission in accordance with 10.4 under special permits and procedures under the town of Portland. It is to be referred to the Historic Society. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. They brought it up tonight. They're trying to take the Sage House out of one phase, which is a requirement right now, and they're trying to put it in phase 3. That right there may stop the Historical Society from giving a good opinion on this. So at the end of the day, the rules are the rules. That's what it states. It doesn't throw it out the window, adaptive reuse. That is wrong. Our regulation doesn't get thrown out of the window just because it's inconvenient. Absolutely not. It is completely relevant, especially when it has to do with timing and phasing of buildings that literally are what that commission needs to review. So 100%, I could not disagree more with that attorney. 100%. There's a reason when you make a change, it says it right in there. It needs to go back to them for this exact reason, so they can weigh in on it, because they may not be comfortable with the changes.
Hey, Dan, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we moved on to in-person round 2. We have some Zoom waiting to speak.
Oh, we're not in person. Yeah. Is it Carrie Olson?
I have Timothy Dickerson, and it sounds like Carrie might be back.
Well, right now, we're not taking,
This is a
public comment.
Point of order is what
Yeah, we're dealing with that. If Carrie is back, certainly I would love her input. But right now, we're kind of dealing with this situation.
Copy that.
Is that you, Carrie? Yeah. Okay, so we've run into a point of order here. But Bob, how would you like to handle this? Would you want Carrie to render an opinion? I'm not sure if she's going to be able to opine on this situation right now.
Yeah, I feel like we need an opinion from the legal representation, but I'm not sure she has heard all the discussion that's taken place.
You have a number of questions for her, correct?
Well,
That have come up?
mainly it's 10.6.2. I think whether it meets the definition of healthcare institution, that's something that the commission, I don't know how much more guidance we can give to you on that. That's something that you'll have to determine as to what's presented as to whether that meets the regulation. Carrie, are you there?
Yeah, I am here. It sounded like you guys thought I was gone, but I'm here.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, did you hear all the information that was presented on this point of order regarding 10.6.2?
Yes.
Are you in a position to provide them some guidance, or was this something that you would need to research?
Well, it depends on what they need guidance on.
Well, I think the contention is whether the public hearing could be opened or not.
Based on 10.6.2, the wording in 10.6.2.
Whether the public hearing can be opened?
So 10.6.2 basically talks about a referral that needs to be made to the Historic Society 30 days prior to opening the public hearing. And there was a contention made that the public hearing should not be opened without that referral having been done, which it was not. And the applicant is contending that that does not apply.
So, I guess I am a little bit confused there, the fact that I thought that all of the renovations to the historic, all the renovations to the historic buildings have already been pre-approved.
So yeah, the preservation of the historic buildings have already been approved. It's the wording in the 10.6.2 that's in question and how it's worded, and then also it's in question the rebuttal from the applicant's attorney that there is language in the MUD regulations, I believe it was 917.6 in that section, that states that this may not apply. So it is quite a bit of interrelated regulation that may be complicated for you to opine on in short order.
All right, well, okay. I'll keep looking at it. If you want to move forward, I'll reach out.
So if you feel, so I guess the commission is just nervous about moving forward. If you feel the commission can move forward and hear more information and take more questions, if Bob thinks that's what they and the commission want to do that's certainly what we can do. They just want the okay from you.
I think they absolutely can move forward and hear all the information. Let's put it this way. The application is in. What is being proposed are modifications to the existing application. And at this point, we are here on a public hearing on those modifications, and they absolutely can take it in. If they ultimately decide that there should be separate information provided relevant specifically to the historic structures, then we can ask for it. But they certainly are, it's within their purview to accept and listen to it. Am I being clear?
We are. We got another point of order that was called.
Hi, Carrie. Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road. How are you?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm great. Do you have a copy of the Portland zoning regulations in front of you by chance?
I absolutely do.
Could you turn to page 10-8, please?
I have it.
Okay, so under 10.6.2, procedures, when any development or change of use is proposed, which includes one or more sites identified in the HRP, which this site is, just so you know. This site has historic resource plan. It's on it. The application is required to submit an application to the commission in accordance with zoning section 10.4 special permit standards. The town shall refer the application to the Historical Society at least 30 days prior to the public hearing for review and comment, meaning the Historical Society needs to get this application 30 days prior to the opening of a public hearing. I brought up a point of order because this process has not been filed. I don't want them to make any more mistakes or take any more testimony That procedure has not been filed in our regs. So they're questioning whether it needs to be. The commission, I don't want to speak for the chairman or anybody on the board, but I believe they want you to now read that and weigh in whether that's what it says or not.
Okay, so it says what it says, but maybe I need a little help from Dan here. But my understanding is that this has been provided to the Portland Historical Society.
So Carrie, anytime there's a change of use on a site, the Historical Society is to be...
Wait. Ben, she's asking me a question.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Carrie, it was not referred to for this application.
Dan Bray, could I be heard? I mean, I don't know.
I think everyone
It's
will
talking about
everyone will get their
structures
chance.
identified within the HRP.
Right.
Okay?
Wait, everybody, please, let's Carrie talk. We will give the applicant's attorney a chance to rebut what has been said. We will try to give everybody a fair shake here. So please, can we have Carrie speak?
Okay, I'm not trying to be difficult. Again, this has been going on for a very long time. There have been modifications in the past, but my understanding from having reviewed what is being proposed as modifications to the existing plan does not change the uses of the historic structures. If I am wrong, please enlighten me, but that is my understanding based on reviewing what was submitted.
Okay, so it does not change the use of the historic structures. It changes uses on the site. But now, please, Ben, come on, sit down. I'm sure you'll call another point of order if you have an issue. Yes, absolutely, please.
Carrie, in the language, it says when any development or change of use. And I think that the word development may be significant to the change of phasing on the Sage House. I think that's the question.
And Carrie, if you want to continue to look, we can have Dave Daniels come up and provide some more information from their perspective.
I just want to be able to give I just want to be able to, Carrie, I just want to be able to give you.
Well, she can't hear you, so just let's wait for the mic to get changed. Thank you so much, Dylan. Appreciate that.
Can you hear me, Carrie?
I can.
Okay, hi, good evening. So I just want to give you my perspective. This issue was just brought to my attention about 20 minutes ago, and I've gone through 10.6. It is clearly a provision that is intended to apply where a determination needs to be made about whether adaptive reuse is going to be required in connection with an application. We are in a MUD special permit situation, which is an entirely separate process, which is basically an overlay. It's got its own provisions for getting density bonuses if you do an adaptive reuse, which is in fact what's happened here. There's a separate section in the MUD regulations that say that the commission may refer the application to the Historical Society, but it is not required to do so. And there's also a provision for basically a superseding provision in the MUD regulations that say that in the event there's any inconsistency between the MUD regulations and other provisions of the zoning regulations, that the MUD regulations will prevail. So, and I agree with you. This process has already, the ship has sailed. This is not, the provision in 10.6, when it talks about development or change of use, it's talking about an application, a new application being brought forward and implementing a potential special permit process. We have a special permit process. The permit's been approved. It's now being proposed for modification. So I don't, and if you read the 10.6, it's completely meaningless what the process that would be followed by the Historical Society. They'd be recommending whether to do an adaptive reuse. That ship has already sailed. So this is just an attempt to try to undo a process that's been in place for, going on for several years. And nothing's been done untoward or inappropriate, and I agree that the hearing should continue. Thank you.
So let me comment, and I think that's consistent with my interpretation of the regulations. If the Planning and Zoning Commission, in its infinite wisdom, has a different interpretation, I'm open to it, but you've asked me. And the way I read 10.6 is when all of this first came before you, this historic site, and you all agreed on what the development could be going forward, and in particular, the preservation of the historic structures on the site. So that decision was made. And the way I read section 10.6 is that already has been decided. And the way I read 10.6.2 and the rest of the criteria is if they were coming before you tonight and asking to change the use of any of the historic aspects of the project, then that could very well require a do-over. But it's my understanding that this process, 10.6, has already happened and been approved. Now, again, the commission does not have to agree with my interpretation, but that's my understanding. Dan, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm kind of leaning on you here, Carrie, I'll be honest. So I don't, but Chantel has a question.
Dan, obviously you've had to apply these regulations. Is my interpretation consistent with how you would read them?
I'm not sure I'm ready to render opinion tonight. This kind of all got thrown at me all at once. So I would want to, discuss that with you and work our way through it.
Okay. Well, I'm not asking you to render an opinion. I just figured that in its application, you're in the best position to say how it's been applied in the past.
Well, certainly. Well, yeah. So I know it had. The Historic Society has been aware of potential changes. I'm not certain. I know in the past modification where there was, I guess, no change of use. I'm trying to think about the modification from 2022. I did not refer anything to the Historical Society. I do suspect in 2018 when this was originally approved that it was. I'd have to go back and look into the record to see whether it was done so back in 2020 when 10,000 square feet of commercial was moved from phase 1 to phase 2. That I'm not sure about. So I can't comment totally about the consistency of how this has been applied throughout the life of the project because I would need to know whether that was done by my predecessor back in 2020.
Okay, so I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that I have been sort of on the outskirts of this project since the beginning. And the Portland Historical Society has been a part of the initial planning process from the get-go. I mean, before there was ever even an application filed. And I remember working very closely with the Historical Society on the phasing and especially the use and also the movement of one of the historic buildings. So I know, at least at the outset, what was being proposed here was presented to and ultimately rubber stamped by the Historic Society. I cannot speak to the modifications in 2020 because I do not believe I was involved or asked for advice on that. But what I'm saying is I read section 10.6 as saying once there is an approved adaptive reuse of a historic or cultural structure, it would be a change to that would require you to go back and get comments from the Portland Historical Society, not necessarily other outside changes within the same overall property. But again, if it's been applied differently, then I have to defer. That's just how I read it.
Yeah, here, let's get you, let's make sure you're on the mic, or is Rob's closer to you? Rob's mic?
My comment is it on?
Yep, yeah, I believe so, yep.
I agree with, I can see, I agree with what Carrie is saying, but there's this little gray area, and that involves the phasing of this, and that's my only sticking point, because I don't think we're talking about changing anything having to do with the historic buildings, correct?
Or use.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
use.
that's correct.
We're not talking about anything like that.
Nope.
And I do agree that everything has been fully vetted in terms of what was going to be done in the first application by the Historical Society. So, you know, I don't really have an issue with that. I think the way this reads, it makes sense to me anyway, that it was done. We're not changing anything there, so we're okay. But I don't know how the phasing of the Sage House would affect that. I don't know if it does. I don't really know if it does.
Okay.
So that's my comment.
Well, and I do think you have every right to consider the phasing question, especially in light of your overarching obligation to keep a very close eye on the development of commercial vis-a-vis residential development, which was I'm just saying, a big concern of the town going all the way back to when this first started. Now, certainly, you know, times have changed, a lot of time has passed, and you all might feel a little bit differently, but that phasing, specifically for the notion of how much commercial versus how much residential, was a huge impetus for the changes in the regulations going back to when this was first approved. But as I said, things have changed, and you know, there's a lot of intervening factors that have come into play. And you know, you all may, within your discretion, have different opinions about how that phasing should go, especially in light of the developer's presentation to you as to whether there are certain difficulties that were not contemplated back then. So, but again, that's up to you. But to me, the adaptive reuse, that was decided. And if we're not changing that, there's no need to go back to the Historical Society.
Well, just into the mic.
Is so that's an official opinion?
Well, that's what she's telling you.
That's her opinion.
Yeah, her opinion on the regulation. But again, just like the healthcare institution, you know, you have to take in the input that you know you've been given and render your decision based on that and what you think the regulations say.
Well, being on this from the beginning, I agree with what Chantel said.
Okay.
Yep, I agree, it was well said. I understand what Carrie is saying, so my opinion is that we will continue with the public hearing tonight.
Okay. I think with that particular matter put to rest, do you want to continue with questions from the commission? And then once that's done?
I think that's, did you addressed all the questions?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, I believe I did address the outstanding questions. Was there anything I didn't address that was outstanding? No. Okay. Okay, so.
So again, in my mind, the one outstanding gray area would be the definition of healthcare institution. But that's up for evaluation by the commission.
Right, Bobby, could you just lean forward a little bit more?
Yeah,
sorry. I don't know if people can hear you.
So I think the one gray area was the definition of healthcare institution, and it will be up to the commission members to decide, how that is to be interpreted.
Okay. Would you want to take questions from the
Yes,
open it
I
up
think
to the
now
public?
we would open it up to, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Dan,
Oh, yeah, take your mic back now.
when we're talking about healthcare institution, you're talking about a licensed healthcare institution that complies with all the state regulations, and you're going through all that process, correct?
Well, the narrative, we tried to pull out the delivery mechanism for those services. Certainly.
Can you speak a little louder?
Oh, I'm sorry, sure. So the short answer is any regulated service has to be provided by a licensed practitioner of whatever that service may be. And so in our narrative, we talk about the delivery mechanism. That could be a tenant within the building. That could be personnel that we hire. It could be a management company's personnel. And so there are many ways that the services that require that oversight would be delivered, but certainly there's nothing that would go on that required licensure that wouldn't be delivered by a licensed person. Whether or not they're our direct employee, that's where there's some language about it, because typically real estate holding companies don't have employees at all, and they outsource services, and then they have things happen at a property through a variety of ways. Okay.
So you're pretty much, the plan is to have the state of Connecticut license whatever operation you have going on.
Whatever requires, whatever services, and the threshold, my partners say, if you touch the other person, that's regulated, right? And so that service provider has to comply in those ways. And so in the list of services, there are things that fall in that category, and we would comply with the law.
Sorry. So when you say such offerings may change from time to time, that kind of leaves it open where you may not need state licensing for what you want to do.
No, I think the state supersedes all, right? So their requirements for anything going on between two human beings within their state, right, that they trump local regs or anything else.
Right, if there's physical contact.
Yeah.
But some of these things that you're listing here do not require physical contact.
So,
and you're not committing to the ones that do. So therefore, there is an ability for a service to come in and provide housekeeping and linen services, transportation to medical appointments. There are a number of things listed here, dining and nutrition services that don't require you to touch anybody. So therefore, you would not be required to have state licensing.
I agree.
Okay.
There are pieces of that,
We're still in a
right?
very gray area as to
we certainly
what we're talking about in terms of healthcare institution, in terms of the definition.
So the healthcare institution is something that when we asked for it to be applied to the MUD, right, in that conversation, the need to keep the job moving was why we incorporated it into the MUD. The separate discussion about how the regulations could be modernized, right, is a sort of a separate process that was discussed at that time. And what we've tried to do is say, what are the best practices for an independent living facility? Because that's under the umbrella of healthcare institution that we say assisted living is under and independent living is also under. They just have more limited services. We tried to articulate the list of services. The reason that we say it can change from time to time is that if, for example, we stopped offering linen services, we don't want the entire operating facility to fall out of zoning compliance. So we were simply trying to say these are the types of things that would happen, and things do change from time to time in terms of the range of services. We could call out some essential services, right, that would be something along the lines of, in this long list, because I was just trying to flesh it out and say these are the things that are different from a normal apartment complex, right? And almost all these things are services that apply well to seniors and are not typical in an amenitized apartment complex. And that was what I was trying to highlight.
Right, but we knew that this was going to be something that needed to be really fleshed out and defined
Sure.
to satisfy the commission, right? So this
absolutely.
is a discussion that has to take
Oh, I'm not
place.
complaining. I was just telling you why I wrote what I wrote, right?
Yeah.
So from the standpoint of the health and wellness programs, access to on-site or visiting healthcare providers, there are some of these things in the list of services that we could require being provided here, right, that can't change, from time to time. I think I brought up the example of hair cutting on site being a very popular thing at some of these things, but sometimes if somebody doesn't, but if that is less popular and we stopped offering that one service, again, we don't want a zoning violation over that. But we can absolutely embrace the health and wellness programs and the access to on-site or visiting healthcare providers. I think that would be strong enough language to require something along those lines happening and being provided by on-site staff that would keep us in this space.
Something like requiring licensing by the state of Connecticut?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I don't have a problem with the licensing of any individual performing the service needs to be licensed. I'm good with that. The idea of a facility being blessed in some way when there are these ranges of services offered at different senior care facilities, that's all I would say.
So you wouldn't have control over that, is what you're saying?
Yeah. We don't want the state to change some of their definitions that then bring us in and out of zoning compliance locally. We have to kind of have something that's robust, but we can agree on certain things. And I would say these types of broad terms will always have something that's wellness and healthcare. And the other one I pointed out was, health and wellness, and then the on-site visiting or healthcare providers. There's no way we don't want to provide that for this facility. So I'm good with locking that in. Where we are, we're in a little bit of a different spot here because usually the definition in the regs is clearer, right? And so we're trying to backfill a regulation with the representations that we'll make that we say, please write this into the approval and we'll comply. So it's a quasi-regulation. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it's Carrie. If I could just add something here.
Certainly, go ahead, Carrie.
So I think maybe the question that is being begged here, and I think it ties into something that I asked you, Dan, I think it was probably 2 meetings ago. I think the real concern here is the last sentence of the definition of a healthcare institution, which says it would be a multifamily dwelling with units designed for a particular population that requires on-site staff. And I think that has to do with my question to you about assisted living versus independent living. And maybe this would help the commission, because it's my understanding that assisted living, the people who live in an assisted living facility require some type of assistance with activities of daily living. Whereas in an independent living scenario, they don't necessarily require any type of assistance with activities of daily living. And so I think something that the commission members from the questions I'm hearing is struggling with is this really designed for a population that requires on-site assistance, and what does that assistance consist of? So I don't know if I'm being helpful or not. Mr. Chairman, if I'm not, you can shut me down. But I think I'm hearing my commission members, and I think this is what they're struggling with.
Carrie, this is Tom Bransfield. I agree 100% what you just stated. It is my understanding if it's an assisted living facility or a residential care, there is state licensing and permitting required. As I understand this, there is no state licensing or permitting required for an independent living facility. But our reg states it requires on-site staff. So the question is, what is the required staff that you will commit to from this day forward? I mean, what are you providing that's medical for the residents that requires on-site staff? That's my question.
Yeah, and my argument is that the regulation does not read that the required on-site staff be medical. What we don't want is a 24/7 medical staff at this facility, because what that will do in order to make this economically viable, it'll be a completely different facility that we no longer feel will be vibrant and be something that we'd want to put a rooftop restaurant into the same building. We'd have a convalescent home if we go too far with this. So we're trying to say that your regulations are unclear, and we comply. If we have someone who is very good at changing bed sheets really fast and they're there 24/7 and we need to say that person's on site, fine, maybe we can agree to that. But we can't get into something that is going to change our target population, which is on the 55 to 70-year-old band, right? Because 55 is the starting point. But as the population gets older and needs more services, this is not what we're offering. We're not offering that housing. And there is a reason that independent living and assisted living are different things. So this is the beginning. This is the beginning of services.
It's not a healthcare institution. It's a
no, I would say it's a healthcare institution.
It's a 55 and older community with enhanced services. Maybe
Which in
there's
your,
some medical
which,
aspect.
and if they're provided with, and if they're
But you are
provided,
not providing it.
if they're provided with on-site staff, then by your regulations,
Requires on-site staff.
yeah. So by your regulations,
Under
it would be a
healthcare
healthcare institution. Is our argument, and I think it would be very hard to challenge that. And I'm not looking to argue. I'm basically saying, here's a solution that we can act on, and we're putting forward.
I hear you that it is a solution that you're proposing. The problem is that we do have to obviously follow our regulations.
And we believe it.
And
we are.
in the regulations, what Tom is saying is that the particular population requires on-site staff. And if you look at the definition of assisted living, that is the population that require, let me finish, on-site staff. Independent living does not require on-site staff. So there is, there's a problem.
Where's the
with
definition of independent
language
living in
here
your regulations?
in putting the two, I'm sorry?
Where is the definition of independent living in your regulations?
The definition of healthcare institution, the one.
Oh, no, I meant, I thought you referenced assisted living and independent living.
I have that actually from, I think, your notes.
Okay,
You were
sure.
describing different tiers of care.
Yes.
Quite a number of meetings ago.
Okay, thank you.
And you spoke about how you wanted to have an independent community that with, healthy people that were vibrant and would go upstairs to the restaurant. And, you were looking for a way to kind of keep the community vibrant and at the same time have it be 55 and older. And so
Sure.
we got to this independent living place.
Sure.
Which I understand. I understand what you're asking for. The problem is that our regulations don't jive with that. The language in how I'm reading it. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I'm reading that one population requires on-site staff and one population does not.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we're trying to fill in something that works. I understand everything you just said, and I agree with kind of how you recounted the prior presentation. So I'm trying to be consistent with all that because actually nothing's really changed that much on my side. We are to flesh out that population, a couple where one of two people, right, requires services. This is something that is being more broadly offered so that the spouse isn't moving into a care facility prematurely either, the one who requires no services. So that it's that blended thing. So I believe very, very strongly, and counsel's in my ear saying, well, it becomes binding if we say we will do X, Y, and Z under this definition. It's just that the definition is so broad, we've tried to bring form to it. I don't think in any way, shape, or form that we're in any problematic area because requiring, a demanding customer can require a lot of things and not that they need it, right? There are a lot of ways to interpret the word requires on-site staff, and we will have on-site staff for a full range of services. We think we cover this so many different ways that it's a very safe thing to approve because we're not trying to remove the healthcare component, I guess. We're just trying not to level it up so much that it makes it a different product from what is out there. And again, independent living, if we all kind of put that into ChatGPT and say, what are the services? It's different from an apartment complex, and it has range of services like this, and that's what we intend to offer, and we think it'll blend nicely with the rest of the development. Oh, no, please. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand that you're looking at the word requires that I'm referencing.
We are.
And saying that.
Do you want to comment on that, Dave?
That.
I just mean in terms of legal interpretation.
That word can be interpreted differently.
Yeah, I would defer to counsel on this because we did, before going down this road, put a lot of time into compliance with your regs. We think that compliance with the regs is a very, very low bar. The higher bar is finding that range of services that hits that sweet spot of independent living that we're trying to facilitate and have it be something that in the same building we'd be having this town-wide, regionally, hopefully popular rooftop restaurant, right? Where it all kind of blends together. And where we've tried to make it consistent, it's not out of nowhere that we've said the apartments in that building will also age restrict so that you have as much, I guess, like a homogeneous population on some level. You don't want kids in the building with the independent living. And so we've tried to refine the whole plan in ways that kind of integrate to a solution that works and also complies with your regs. And that's been the matching exercise all along. What will the market want? And frankly, we think that the A building, again, to go broadly back to stuff we've been talking about, it enables us to do the B building, right? Everybody wants to do the B building. We're trying to figure out how to make it something else cash flow enough to speculate on that. And can I throw out one other thing just because of the comments back and forth? Like, there was a proposal before you to remove your discretion, right? As it related to phasing plans and the review of those. And the commission chose to keep their discretion, and I'm glad you did. I would throw out that in the context of these historic buildings, the original approval had us responsible for 2, and to allow the other building to be moved on site and then hopefully fit it up someday. I'd just like to point out that one of our modifications had us take on a 3rd, and it's squarely in phase 2, and we have another building in phase 1. So I don't think that we've, from our day 1 commitments, even with Sage moving into the 3rd phase, with our taking on Hart Jarvis and putting it in phase 2, and clearly before everyone investing in it heavily, and actually people are using Sage right now, but I mean, we're rocking and rolling. We're just trying to keep going. So I just wanted to throw out that we took on a third historic building, and we think we're doing our part, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, further questions before we open it to public comment? Okay, seeing none then, I guess we'll start entertaining comments, questions from members of the public. Again, we do have a sign-up sheet if you wish to speak. That is who we'll be calling names from, so, and there will be a 5-minute limit per session.
I think it's about 8.
Almost 8.
It's almost 10.
So, one thing,
Before we begin public comment, shall we take a 5-minute break?
Thank you.
sure, yeah, I need a 5-minute break.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's do that.
Okay. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Do you have a cat?
You're welcome.
What?
You're welcome.
Say something on this one. Look at
Okay, we'll now resume the meeting, and I was reminded that we need to end this meeting by 9:30 tonight because of facility constraints. So we'll now open it up to public comment based on our sign-up sheet.
First speaker is Debbie Law.
Good evening, everyone. Debbie Law, 18 Bell Court. I wanted to compliment the leadership of Brainerd Place Project on how pretty the brownstone base looks on the apartment building. It really looks very nice. Most people do not have the fortitude to stick to their convictions in the face of much adversity these days. It's the way of the world. We indicated no to any more than 240 apartments, so a way around that in the form of senior apartments, assisted living, independent living has now been proposed. We specifically said no to additional apartments because this was our one and only shot at a business district. We have the quarries and 3 golf courses and could aid in supporting a business district here in Portland, not to mention that the location of the Brainerd Place project has a good deal of commuter traffic in its vicinity. I propose we say no to additional apartments, because that's what it is, for senior living or independent living, however you want to word it. I could live there, and if I go to a hairdresser, they're licensed. If I go to a social worker, they're licensed. If I go to a physical therapist, they're licensed. I personally find this proposal insulting. We said no to more apartments, and to me this feels like you are splitting hairs, that if mom says no, ask dad, or that we are thought to be just too ignorant or weak to stand our ground. I know it is more than a challenging climate for retail. However, I personally can wait until the proper opportunity for Portland avails itself. I have no children. I know most of you do. Okay, this is what we're leaving to future generations. Again, the base of the apartment looks lovely. Thank you for your time and consideration, and thank you again to the Planning and Zoning Board for their continued efforts with this endeavor.
Okay, moving along, Dave Murphy. Dave, could you just state your address?
Yep.
Thank you.
Certainly, thanks. Dave Murphy, 40 Carousel Drive. Just thankful that I'm up here before Ben. Really, I just want to read some of the notes I put down so I stay on track here, and I want to start out with, there's basically 4 points I want to bring up. The first one is opinion. You know, I want to share my thoughts and opinions. Everyone speaking is doing just that. They're sharing their opinion. And we can't make major decisions on who speaks the most, or the loudest, or the most often, or gets their friends to come to these meetings and speak as well. We can't lose sight of the big picture. We have to do what's best for the town. So here we go. Where were we? We had an overgrown lot with falling down buildings, with historic homes that no one had funds to save. That's our baseline. So we can't forget that. We've got this beautiful structure there, but everybody forgets where we started. What do we want? We want to develop the property to be a symbol of development, not blight, as you come over that bridge. I think we're well on our way there. A development that not only significantly increased the much-needed tax revenue, but would bring people to town to shop in local businesses, buy gas at local gas stations, eat in local restaurants, get their dog groomed at local groomers. And actually, that's what attracts businesses to town, is when they see, hey, we've got people that are going to buy our goods and services, we'll relocate to Portland. But when they see this downtown struggling to actually sell things, I go into the Pizza Primavera, and they barely got any customers in there because there's not a lot of people that want to shop in our downtown. The historic houses brought back to life, but we had no money to pay for it. You would think the Historical Society would be doing backflips on this project, wanting it to get done as soon as possible, because they fell down on their commitment to do one of the houses, and the developer came in and saved the day. In other words, we need to help our struggling downtown and make it more vibrant. What we have, when we finish this development, we're going to have apartments that pose a small town burden on the town and the schools. We're going to have Starbucks. We're going to have additional 55-plus housing that all the real estate agents have been telling me we desperately need in this town. Whether it's assisted living or just 55-plus, we need it, period. More importantly, significantly more tax revenue to the town with property and car taxes, as well as sewer and water fees. You know, expenses are not going up in this town, and every time I see on Facebook, it says, well, the tax rate's going up, the mill rate's going up. Well, the only way it doesn't go up is when you bring more revenue to the town. And this is what we're trying to do, is bring more revenue to this town. And it's going to have immediate revenue with car taxes, and then over time, it's going to have property tax revenue. The 3 historic houses saved and renovated at the property owner's expense would never have happened. It probably would have been demolished if the property had gone into such disrepair where they were unfixable. They would have been gone. The reality is almost all projects pivot and change and have change orders, especially ones that span several years and go through a pandemic. Let's not forget that. Things change. Let's look at the landscape today. Bob's Stores is closing. Odd Lots is closing stores. You find empty stores in all the plazas. Look at the retail stores by Subway. It took years for those to get filled. So, well, we got a vape shop and we got a tattoo parlor. So be careful what you ask for, because if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, we may not get something that we really, really don't want. So my opinion is we keep this project moving forward. We stop trying to put obstacles that we can't justify outside of our opinions. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Judith Grippo. If you could just state your address, please, when you get up there. Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to make you think you had to shout. I apologize for that.
Thanks. My name is Judy Grippo. I live at 10 Middle Haddam Road in Portland. Been a resident here most of my life. I'm also a registered nurse. I have over 40 years of experience as a healthcare professional at Middlesex Health. And I'm speaking to you as a healthcare professional. Why do I bring this up? Because I've been to at least 3 meetings and watched a lot of Zoom, but I haven't seen the developer bring any healthcare expert before the commission. He has an engineer, he's got his architects, he's got a lawyer, he's had a traffic person, but no healthcare expert. And when he answers questions, every question is kind of vague, and the answers are vague. And yes, we're going to have active adult living came up today by the architect, and independent living. I find these to be buzzwords. What are you going to provide for our citizens that are going to move in? Handrails do not make an assisted living, and that's my point. You can't just put handrails up in an apartment and say, here's your assisted living. We all know the atrium is down the street. That was proposed as an assisted living at one point and was not able to, provide the care that they needed, and they are just an over 55 right now. What's to say that this gentleman and his idea of assisted living in 5 years doesn't come to fruition, and now we have 100+ apartments. And the town has spoken many times, loud and clear, we don't want any more apartments. I'm sorry, I'm just reading through my notes. I also believe that if you're going to do assisted living, what about emergencies? You have one entrance and exit onto 66. What about ambulances? What about the care that these people may need? If it is truly an assisted living, that means you're providing health care to these people 24/7. That's what assisted living means. I think what is being proposed is a 55 and over apartment building. I work at Middlesex, and most of you might know One McDonough Place. That was an assisted living that the hospital provided care for many years to its residents. It became untenable for the hospital, a big corporation, a very big employer of the Middletown area, to keep going, and they closed One McDonough Place. Now, if a main hospital that is, into healthcare can't keep a healthcare system going, how is a developer going to be able to do that? I propose that I'd like to see open space in this building. I truly believe that the developer wants the 4th floor to be an open restaurant, and he will do anything, and I do mean anything, in the first 3 to 4 floors, including, and I joked on this on Facebook, he'd put a jail in there if he could get a restaurant on the 4th floor. I think the commission probably made a big mistake by adding healthcare institution to the MUD regulations without having a definition of healthcare institution. And now you're backpedaling because you don't have a definition of assisted living, independent living, over 55 living, and everything is very vague. And I think that that was the first mistake, that you should have backed off, not given MUD that health institution proposal, and now we're backpedaling because we don't know what assisted living is, what independent living is, what active adult living is, what are these definitions? We don't have them. So I ask the commission not to pass tonight this, or in the near future, not to put additional 100 plus apartments, is what I'm calling them. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, the next person was all set with their questions were answered, and the following person is Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road.
Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road. That lady's going to be very difficult to follow. She did a great job. David's will be pretty easy. Sorry, I'm sorry, I'll lean in. David said, he talked about opinions, and let's talk about fact. If you approved this or considered approving this, our sewer plant, this will put us over the threshold. I don't know why people aren't talking about it, but it's a fact. So it's like David said, let's deal in fact. Our sewer plant is on the brink of failure. We're running at 50% capacity. In order to get back to 100% capacity, it's $4,028,000 to repair. That we're going to have to come up with, but don't worry. Dan said that has nothing to do with this application. You're going to have to fix it at some point anyway. And you know what? Obviously, it'll be sooner if that happened. So let's talk about fact. Fact of the matter is, Dan said tonight, all the buildings, let me quote him, let's see, entirety under construction for phase 1. That is an inaccurate statement. CVS building, and I know he claims it's ugly, but it is on the approval, and it is in phase 1, and it is not under construction. Okay? So in its entirety, phase 1 is not under construction. So let's talk about what we will be giving up if we were to go down this road. There's currently a 13,000 square foot building, ugly or not, that is required to be built in phase 1 at the corner. If we were to go down this road, he would like us to go down to 65,000 square feet of commercial, give or take. 15,000 of that is the historic homes. So we're talking about 50,000 square feet of commercial. And in return, guess what we get? 240 apartments and then another 108 disguised 55 and older apartments as a healthcare institution. So we would end up, and on top of it, I'm sure he's going to be asking for a tax abatement, or I would think he's going to be asking for a tax abatement on more than what we've already given him as a tax abatement. This is a very rough road, but back to, I think Tom understood the regulations quite well. It is very difficult to get past the healthcare institution, the last sentence, you guys were all on it, but you can't forget about any multifamily dwelling. Full stop. He already said tonight he's already used all his dwellings. He doesn't even meet the 1 unit or 2 unit dwelling, where I believe making the Isinglass application come in to get a multifamily approved first before we're going to allow it to become a healthcare institution. We need to be consistent. We don't have any more units. You need to meet any multifamily dwelling, okay? But then further it goes on, designed for a particular population. You need to put on the record tonight, or I would urge you to put on the record tonight, what is that particular population you're going for? It can't be 55 to 70-year-old people. It needs to be a particular population. You need to get it on the record what their needs are going to be and what the services required. Otherwise, let's be honest. How does this differ from the atrium approval? The atrium has plenty of extra things, like I believe it has a theater, a bar, a bunch of other things in there that are offered, could easily be considered a healthcare institution. This is a 55 and older apartment with a few amenities, let's be honest. So he doesn't, I don't believe, and I just find it hard to believe, you'll get past that definition, it doesn't meet it. Furthermore, in section 10.4F, violations. We all know there's 4 or 5 violations. I brought them up. I asked the town attorney to weigh in. I do believe the town attorney, according to Dan in the last meeting, has agreed that there are violations on the brick, there are violations on the brownstone, there are violations on the metal roof, there are violations on the sidewalk. It says we're to follow the state statute when there's a violation. So one of my questions tonight, have we followed the state statute for these violations? I'm not even sure we're allowed to be entertaining a new application from the applicant if they have identified violations under the state statute. This is just a question, but I'm saying we need to follow the procedures. That's what it says in there. Dan put on the record tonight, and I'd like it as part of the approval, if you were to go, so inclined to go that route, it said no kids. Because let's face it, that wasn't what he said in the last meeting. You can go back, it says we don't want kids in building A. So what are we getting? So we're giving up 119,000 square feet of commercial, we're going down to 65,000 potentially. If you look up at the map, this isn't even accurate. Look where the island is for the driveway when you leave here. That's not right. I don't know what else is inaccurate, but look where you can't cross over, and I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a crossover there, but you need to get on the record staffing. Is it 24 hours? Who is it? What are they going to be doing? Sorry, are you telling me my time's up? I don't want to go over. Yeah. I don't want to go over if I need to come.
If you could finish up in the next 15, 20 seconds, I don't think the commission's going to mind you entering.
So obviously, it's pretty important, even if you do consider this as a healthcare institution, did we get a review from the police, the fire? Obviously, you already have a review on the sewer, what this is going to do to the community and how we're going to try to come up with $4 million to fix that. Really concentrate on how does this differentiate from the atrium. It doesn't, so obviously this is just a 55 and older. Please don't put the last building in phase 3. You're giving up something we already have. Everything just keeps getting kicked and kicked and kicked. It's currently in phase 2. If I have more, I'll come back up. Thank you again.
Okay, moving on, and I apologize if I say your last name wrong. Maria Demarest? Demarest? Sorry about that. You got to go up to the podium. I'm sorry.
I'm Maria Demarest. I live at 43 Omar Road Turnpike, and quite frankly, the questions I had are not ready to be answered tonight. So I give up my minutes.
Okay. Thank you, and I guess we will move on. Elwin Giles, 332 Middle Haddam Road.
Elwin Guile, 332 Middle Haddam Road, my birthplace. Let's not talk about opinion, let's talk about fact. This is going to be longer than I expected because of that kind of comment about opinion. And other closing comments by Mr. Bertram and Mr. Murphy. My fact basis for discussion started 11 years ago. If you want to know about planning the Elmcrest site for its future, I was instrumental in getting the grant that produced the reports, that produced the studies, and engaged the community in 3 different scenarios of development, all of them representing a town-centered orientation for the benefit of the citizenry. The historic structures on that property were protected because they're all part of a historic district, not because of any particular favoritism to the Historical Society. I'm tired of hearing reference, and I want to make this absolutely emphatic. The Hart Jarvis House has from day one always been the property of the owner and the developer. Had absolutely nothing to do with the Historical Society or anyone else. If you look at the record, it's perfectly clear. So I don't want to ever hear again that someone stepped forward at the last minute and decided, out of some kind of benevolence, to take on the responsibility of the Hart Jarvis House. It was always, from day one, the responsibility of the owner-developer. That's the first time I've spoken to that after all these years of listening to that garbage. Finally, and to you, my friends, as commissioners, I sit with you. I have sat with you. I have been sitting with you longer than you have sat in those seats. And you have nothing more than my total respect and my sympathy as well. You're deserving of so much more support than you get. And part of that is up to you to request. So I'm not letting you off the hook either. You've heard suggestions that maybe decisions should have been made differently in the past. And I think that's true, and I think you would agree. But that is in large measure a reflection of the kind of support you get from the town's administration, including its legal representation, where those members of our community's governance, I think, have failed to be as effective and supportive as they could be to you. So in closing, I'm going to ask you to be assertive in making certain that you have all the time you need to make your considerations, all the information and advisory support from existing staff and contract. John Gruszkowski could very well be here and should have been here all the way through all of this. We got a $60 million project, and we can certainly afford to have additional support to Dan Beret. There's no excuse for not providing you with absolutely every tool and element of support that is deserved. This is a subterfuge to take us back to the last hearing that we had. You've already made a determination on whether or not a third apartment building is acceptable. You've made that decision. The decision tonight will be the same because it's the same proposal. Thank you very much.
Well, there's one more person, then we got to take online questions. Yeah, so, you sign up? Yeah, sign up. Yeah, I'm keeping it 100. Moving on, Kit Zernicki, 435 Main Street, and then for anybody on Zoom, I believe Pete and Dylan have told me that there are people who wish to make some comments, and we will open up the mic to you after Kitch.
Thank you. Kitch Breen Zernicki, 435 Main Street. I'm here, up here this evening because I'm still wondering when the traffic lights are going to be turned on. As a person who walks and uses part of Main Street as part of my path, I'm concerned that the lights are not on. So do we have a time when we're going to have the lights turned on?
I don't know, but if you want to ask all your questions, I can relay them through Bob, or Bob can ask the developer to answer them for you.
And then the healthcare professionals that will be working or providing healthcare services, who will they be? I just think that things stand in a pretty vague state right now. And I think we probably, as residents, need a little bit more clarification. So if you could provide that, it would be great. Thank you.
Would you want to hear the Zoom questions first and then have the?
I think let's hear all the questions.
Okay, and I'll keep track, and then if you want, we can try to have if you'd like, we can have the applicant respond.
Yep.
So I guess Pete and Dylan, I guess whoever's first on the Zoom queue.
Up first, we have Timothy Dickerson.
Hello, Tim Dickerson, 12 Belleport, Portland. I just want to hopefully put some clarification and put this to rest on what a healthcare institution is from our own definitions. We're all familiar, the first half of it talks about medical facilities. The last sentence says any multifamily dwelling with units, period. Don't go any further than that. Our own definition of what a multifamily dwelling unit is any building erected or used and designed and intended to be occupied by no more than 4 families living independently of each other. Period. 4 is the limit. So he cannot use that sentence to claim he's a licensed, or to claim he's a medical institution. Okay, now we talk about that little regulation change that we had a few weeks ago. Let me pull it up here. Healthcare institution. It says commercial uses for the purposes of this 9.17 is everything set forth in 917.2b as being recognized and permitted in the MUD other than residential dwelling units. Okay, so it doesn't meet the first half of that. What about the second half? Provided, however, that residential dwelling units shall not include beds or units within a healthcare institution. And we don't have to go any further than that. Let's go back. What is a residential dwelling unit? Okay, the definition for that, 1 second. Okay, we have a definition of dwelling unit. 1 or more rooms providing complete living facility for one family, including equipment for cooking or provisions for the same. Okay, so what we're talking about are all these combined little individual dwelling units inside of a healthcare institution. Go back to the definition of healthcare institution. Since we know it doesn't qualify for the multifamily dwelling, which one of these listed above is this going to be? A hospital, healthcare facility for the handicapped, mental health facility, alcohol or drug treatment facility, or infirmary operated by education? We know it's not one of those. Okay, or a hospital operated by the state agency. Which one of those is it going to be to meet the definition of our healthcare institution? Okay, now where did that definition come from? Well, you know what? If you look on it, and I'm a betting man, you go to Connecticut State Statutes 19A-490, and it's almost word for word what we have there, except we got to go back in time because they've had about 30 amendments to it since then, including an amendment that allows for the provision for not having those multifamily dwelling units included, only different terminology. So that definition that we're using is the state's definition. And by the way, the state says that all healthcare institutions must be licensed by them, and it's licensed under the, I'm sorry, 1 second, lost my page. The investigation section, facility licensing and investigation section for Connecticut holds jurisdiction over the licensing and clinical care and services provided by Connecticut healthcare institutions. Okay, so which one of these licensed one is it? They've got a whole section here covering all the facilities that they license, including hospitals, assisted living service agencies. So tell me which one of those in our definition he's going to be, and no matter what, he has to be licensed under the state. If we let him try to get away with fitting into some loophole where he's not licensed by the state, it's ridiculous. If he wants to put a commercial medical facility or medical care institution in there that is licensed by the state, I'm all for it. It's a commercial business. If it loses its licenses, every single one of the apartments or so-called units in there will be vacated until it gets relicensed. He wants to be able to have people come and go as they please, not have it licensed, not provide proper staffing levels, not provide proper services of a licensed facility. And we're going to be the ones responsible for it, because we're the ones, not we, you're the ones who would approve it. Stick to the definitions that we have. He doesn't meet them. And that's basically it. Stick to our definitions. Your decision is it does not meet our definition to be a medical care facility. It's not going to happen. What happens if it does? Well, yeah, we're going to have these 108 extra apartments. And yeah, they may be 55 and older, but people keep forgetting. I would say at least 10% of them are going to be filled by Portland residents, and they're going to free up their 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom homes. And who's going to backfill them? Families with 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom, 4 kids. And how many is that going to put into our school system? Don't fool yourselves thinking any of these apartments is not going to affect our school system. Because depending on how many Portland residents want to retire and stay in Portland and move to these facilities, you're just opening up that many more homes with all these bedrooms that are getting filled with kids going into our school system. I think that answers your question. You should have enough information now to deny this application modification because he does not meet our definitions. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Do we have another person on Zoom? Okay, that's our only online comment. Would you want the applicant, Bob, to respond?
Why don't we give the applicant, the opportunity to respond?
Sure. Oh, yeah, we'll go to that.
All right, so I took notes. If I missed something, please point it out, but I'll try to address the ones that I was able to write down. So the one thing, because we didn't show it on the screen, I figured I would read the use narrative. And this is for Building A, Aragoni, just for the sake of the public consumption of this document. Replace 3-story building including 71,581 square feet of commercial uses and 11 residential uses with a 4-story building including 130,254 square feet of commercial uses and 11 age-restricted units on the top floor. 130,254 square feet will be comprised of an 8,859 square foot rooftop restaurant plus a 121,395 square foot healthcare institution in the form of an independent living facility. Independent living units will be occupied by at least one person aged 55 or older and meet the requirements of the Housing for Older Persons Act. Various services and amenities will be made available and administered by on-staff and located at the healthcare institution, as are generally available at independent living facilities servicing age-restricted populations. And this is where I want to punch up the services. Such offerings may change from time to time, but will initially include emergency call systems, wellness checks, access to online or visiting healthcare providers, housekeeping and linen services, transportation to medical appointments, health and wellness programs, social and recreational activities, security, and dining and nutrition services. On-site staffing required to provide these services and amenities may be employees of the building owner, employees of the building's management company, third-party contractors, and/or personnel of a tenant leasing space within the independent living facility.
You just misspoke on,
Oh, I'm sorry.
on one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said access to online.
Oh,
or
on-site,
visiting
on-site,
healthcare,
I'm sorry.
And I think you wanted to say on-site.
No, thank you, Victoria. Okay, see, yes, access to on-site or visiting healthcare providers. So, excuse the misspeaking. That, because we had submitted that to the commission, but we hadn't read it to the public, was something that I think would address Judy's comments. Emergencies, certainly emergency personnel providers reviewed this and have commented, and staff reports have been submitted, and we responded to staff. I would not put a jail in the building under any circumstances. I'm not making light, but there is a delicate balance of finding complementary uses to effectuate the overall business plan. As it relates to the buildings being under construction, the proposed phase one is what I intended there, Ben. And so, yes, I would not argue that the CVS is under construction. It's clearly not, and nor is, I think, the best plan for the town to have it be. The violations, if there are any violations at the site, they're talking about different size sidewalks, all these other things that came up at different times. Certainly, we're supposed to have 5-foot wide sidewalks, and if we're doing something wrong, just tell us and we'll correct it, because we have a very professional team out there, and I appreciate the help keeping everybody performing. I think that kind of hopefully goes without saying. As it relates to, well, I think I had one more sheet here. The traffic light timing, that is determined by DOT. I would have thought they'd be turned on by now. The same way they took the monument, they do what they will do when they do it. I will say that the week of, I think within the next 2 weeks, the top course goes on the, where they mill and repave. So there are a few finishing touches going on out there. How much that's related to when the DOT says you may turn on the signal, it's up to them. But we are certainly completing the scope of work as quickly as we can, and they'll let us know, and we'll all know, I guess, when it gets turned on. So the talked about the healthcare professionals, to the extent that a service needs to be provided by someone with licensure, it will be. We will certainly not have anything go on at the facility that should be provided by a professional that is licensed, that we're trying to provide. That's something that we're very focused on. That's why the language is so carefully stated in our proposed use. As it relates to, I think that this broader context of whether or not our proposal complies with your regs, all I can say is unequivocally we've looked at this and we strenuously believe that what we're proposing and the services that we're describing more than address the town's regs. Whether or not the town's regs are long-term adequate for the evolving world, I don't know. But we believe our proposal more than meets them, and so we've also tried to work with the town to provide things that we don't have to along the way as well, because this is a collaboration. And so we appreciate having worked with the town so far on this project for many, many years. And, you know, things come in seasons. Ellen was very helpful at a point in the way, along the way, and I'll acknowledge that publicly. But, you know, we do have an evolution to a project, and we're trying to adapt to the world we're in and push forward. So we appreciate your time.
Dan, can I just ask you to clarify one thing?
Oh, absolutely. No, I didn't mean to wrap up.
Kind of a sentence that we've been focusing on in the use narrative.
Yes, okay.
And the sentence I'm questioning is, such offerings may change from time to time, but will initially include, and then a list of services.
Sure.
Do I understand that to mean you would include all of those services initially?
Yes.
That's how I read it. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and this was highly worked with our entire development team across 5 different organizations. It's a large group that is developing this property at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Just one question. When you talk about your development team, do you have a healthcare expert on your development team?
What we have is, in particular, a gentleman who developed, I would say, 9 facilities in New York State in this independent living space. And that person shared his best practices from that development company. And so that was, I would say, this is one of the DeMarco Group's key people. and was instrumental in saying, following the rejection of the additional apartments, was instrumental in saying, hey, have you looked at it this way? We've done these types of developments. And what was interesting, and it built up a fair bit of steam in a positive way, was in putting this type of use that is often in a standalone drive-in, drive-out type of environment, that combining it with the rest of this development was an exciting twist to that development team. And so we've been building on a fair bit of experience there.
We don't have any, you don't have any documentation with a letter. Do you not have any documentation with his opinion, or you don't have, do you have anything?
His name's Paul Foti, F-O-T-I. I think it was Landmark. It was a large, it's Legacy or Landmark. I have to look it up, but it started with an L. And it was in New York State. That portfolio was bought by some large private equity group. It was a very successful exit that he worked for this company doing this type of thing. But there is an evolving, I think one thing that is tough about this is because there is a little bit of an evolving space here in terms of senior care. It has changed over time, and we have a certain slice of it that we're focused on. But I can look up the thing that starts with an L and give you that before we leave, just because I always get the first letter, but I sometimes mangle it after that. So I can look that up. If that helps.
I would echo that. I think it would be, I don't know why I'm talking. I think it would be helpful to have some kind of an understanding on what you're trying to model this after, because I have questions about what the marketing thing would look like, and if there is something out there that you're trying to model after, it would be helpful to know what it is.
Sure, I can. I will give that to you in 1 second, I think. Well, I think I'll come up and give you a reference. Now, again, this is the inspiration. It's not, I mean, there's no other Brainerd Place anywhere, I'll tell you that, in terms of these 3 historic buildings. You weave together a lot of people's skill sets, but I'll give you the reference in a second. I just don't need to pull it up on my phone while everybody's looking at me, because I'll find it in a second. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Dan before he steps away? Legacy.
Oh, Legacy, is it? Yeah, okay. All right.
Do you want us to take some public comment, and then you can wrap up with that information?
Yeah, I think that, because I'll be able to give you a little more context if I can pull it up myself.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're moving on to round 2. I've put out a question sign up for round 3 as well, if we, we do have to end at 9:30, but we should have time for more than three more speakers. First speaker, Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road.
I'll be much quicker. Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road. Number of beds, I don't know if that was spelled out, and I apologize if you guys have it on a map and I don't. How many 1-bedroom, how many 2, very relevant for sewer. Are there any 3s, are there any 4s? I just want to make sure we have that on the record for the, if you were to go that route. When Dan got back up, he did answer a lot of questions, thank you. I didn't hear him answer the kid question, where he said, we don't want kids, and there's a difference between don't want and might have, and I just want to get that ironed out. Let's see, what services, that really needs to be spelled out, can't be vague. There has to be some things that differentiate this from a 55 and older. You really need to get that on the record. I understand things maybe we do modifications when they change, but at the end of the day, if you're going down this road, it's got to be very explicit, and you really got to get that ironed out. The services, for how long, what they are, all that stuff. Keep in mind this overall project, we're going to be going down to 50,000 square feet of commercial retail, and there is nothing left. That's it, if you were to go down this road for this building. He said that the police fire was answered, so hopefully you guys do have those letters, and if that's the case, so be it. You still can go down the road. I respect Carrie's opinion. You still can go down the road if you guys feel it is important to have the Historical Society weigh in. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. You can give your own, you can have Dan refer that over at any point if you feel there is something you would like to hear from them, especially when we are talking about changing phasing of buildings and things to that effect on the site, but I read it differently. But regardless, I'm moving on. And then keep in mind, last one, I think it's the last one. Oh, well, two things. Thank you again for serving, and obviously you guys don't get paid and nobody thanks you enough. So this does not meet your definition. You go through that definition, keep walking yourselves through that, have a conversation that doesn't meet it. Wanted to thank that guy on Belcourt. Tim did a great job, and Dave, I actually waited to sign up late so other people could get up here and talk first. So thank you again, guys.
I might just answer one question for Ben. It was requested that we get the fire chief's opinion. This hasn't been referred to the police department. Oh, sorry. Did you want to respond or wait to the end?
If I could just at least throw out this part, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting
Well,
the process. I was just
Bob, it's up to you.
Oh,
I think he's just providing the
Okay.
the name of the.
Okay. Legacy Senior Living Communities was the organization that Paul Foti, as Executive Vice President, worked for prior to joining the DeMarco Group. The portfolio is owned by Watermark Retirement Communities now. I'm not representing that we're proposing exactly what they do, but I'm showing the bench strength of the development team because Paul was instrumental in laying out the A building first floor spaces that Maura presented at the last meeting, if that helps. And by the way, it was ranked by number of independent living units. It's like they were ranked number 1,000, number of independent living units, 1,050. I don't know what region this was, but Dave found this online. So.
Would you just repeat after Legacy? I didn't get the whole.
Oh, Legacy Senior Living Communities was the organization, but I believe they were bought by Watermark Retirement Communities, and Paul Foti, F-O-T-I, was the Executive Vice President within that organization and was, like I say, lead on the crafting of the uses in the first level of the A building.
Carrie, are you there?
I am here.
I just had a question. Should we have the applicant submit a consistent document on what that is or that entity is and the properties they have for the commission, just so it's on the record? Or, because I just imagine the commission members wanting to look into this facilities and...
Yes, if he's making a reference to it and he's asking the commission to refer to it, it would be best to have it be a part of the record.
Okay. So I would say if you guys decide to continue the public hearing and keep it open, that we ask the applicant to provide some information regarding that, so it's a consistent document that you all view and the public will all view in the record, and then you all be basing, whatever decision you make or how that may affect your decision. Yeah, that's my concern. I don't want each of you Googling it different ways and then going down different rabbit holes. So it's just very consistent.
Well, I was okay with that, by the way, because we got to close this hearing sometime.
Well, I know.
There are no kids, and age restricted, by the way, that question, that's definitional. The assisted living and the housing for older persons, there is nothing that leads to school-age children in those homes.
That's the link.
Oh.
www.legacy. It's www.legacyrochester.com.
That's okay, we can't look it up.
Yeah, I just don't want them to do independent research, Dave. So that's my only concern.
We won't
Okay, so, yeah, so if you want to submit something into the record, we know now that this is out there, but if you want to submit.
We want to close the hearing 10 million times more than we want to do that.
Okay,
So
fair
that is, externalities are afoot, but
Okay.
I'll stop.
So, yeah, so at this point, just take that as a piece of information, but don't Google that unless, just don't Google that. Okay. All right, moving on, Debbie Law, 18 Belcourt.
Debbie Law, 18 Belcourt. I'll be very brief. Mr. Bertram, it's nothing personal. You seem like a nice person. It's not a personal thing. I just don't think it's in the best interest of Portland. I think independent living is so important with the aging population, so I propose that we split the 240 apartments and make 120 of those independent living with everything you're suggesting. And then I propose, and this is the crazy idea, but it doesn't matter, but we have the man, I don't even know his name, I think it's Carini. My cousin lives in New York, and he told me, this man's all into cars, he's on TV. What about a car museum? We have 3 golf courses and Chris Cody. What about a high-tech golf institute? We're a mecca for golf in the state, and maybe even part of the country. What about some big ideas like that? I heard Hallmark, I don't watch Hallmark movies, but I heard they come to Connecticut to film. What about content? I just pray for a big idea for this town, Mr. Bertram. I know the real estate market, and nobody detests Amazon more than I do. It's tragic, actually. And I feel for you in the position that you're in terms of retail. My head's not in the sand with that. I just really pray for something better for Portland. And I do believe we need independent living with the aging population, and I'm not even going to say that I'm not going to move in there in 10 years, but I just want us to split. We said 240 apartments, let's make 120 of those into independent living, So thank you, and again, it's nothing personal, I'm sure you would be a nice person to live next door to. You seem like a decent human being, but I want better for this town, and we said no to more apartments, so thank you.
Okay, moving on. Kyle Fitzgibbons. If you could just say your street number when you get up there, Kyle. Thanks.
Kyle Fitzgibbons, 6 Middle Haddam Road. All right, so one of my questions is in regards to your sidewalks. Is it the sidewalks in question for 5 feet, the ones that run parallel with 66 in an east and west direction? Is that the 5-foot ones?
They all are.
They all are? Because you had your guy with the plans, hold them up, and you said, yeah, they say 5 feet. But then you poured a whole nother section of non-compliant sidewalk. So, right after that meeting.
No, I mean.
Go on, along 66.
Wait, hold on. So just ask your questions, and then we'll have Dan respond.
So, he came here, acknowledged that the plans spec for a certain thing, and then in his lack of oversight, chose not to stick to the plans. He's allowing non-compliant, building to be had. The other thing is, you were asked, is there a certified medical person on your staff? It's one of 3 answers, yes, no, or I don't know. So you went and gave a long-winded answer of this guy with his credentials and all this crap that he's done without answering the question, which is common for every time you're asked a question. You don't answer the question. You're a politician, sir. You don't respond to what's asked of you. You don't give complete and truthful answers. And maybe that's your plan, is to delay, snow, and otherwise avoid what's asked of you and what you're supposed to do.
Would you like to respond?
I'd like to address Debbie Law first, if I may. I agree. I think we'd get along just fine if we knew each other in another context and even in this one. outside the
I'm
box.
sorry, can you adjust your mic a little bit? You're coming in really soft.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that that Debbie and I would get along well, I'm sure, in any other context, and maybe we're even getting along okay in this one. I would argue, and we had a gushing letter from the Nordic Spa, investment begets investment. They perceive a project going on here that will continue through to completion. They supported our prior applications, and I would argue that a Nordic Spa is pretty darn cool, and that came to town in part and I'm telling you what the investment people at Pomeroy Lodging said to me and wrote a letter about. They're related. So not that I'm taking specific credit for it, I'm just saying the job that we're starting is stimulative and it can play out in positive ways throughout the town. On this 5-foot sidewalk thing, I've asked this question. I walked the site with Mizzy today. They have one section on the island that the DOT said had to be 4 feet. This is crossing Marlboro. That was the only thing the guy could think of could possibly not be 5 feet. So if there's something that's not 5 feet, tell us. It'll be fixed. I don't know what to say about that, but maligning our character about something that is going on that, you know, contractor's not going to be paid unless it's done right, then I'm not sure I understand that. And in terms of my statement about the way services would be offered, I think we covered how those services would be provided in the statement I read a few minutes ago. If I missed anything, let me know. I'm not trying to miss anything.
Okay.
All right, that's the end of that round. Are there any Zoom questions, Pete or Dylan?
Not yet.
Okay, none currently. I think Pete.
Oh, wait.
Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is Carrie, if I could just say a couple of quick things.
Yes, go ahead, Carrie.
Okay, so again, I'm not a member of the public, but I feel strongly that I have to address at least a suggestion that this commission has not had the staff or legal support to review this project that's required. I take personal affront to that because I've been responsive every time I've been asked. I take a special affront to that, knowing how hard Dan has worked. Dan Beret, that is. He has worked to the point of exhaustion on this project. He has come to me every time he has had a question, or any member of the commission has had a question. I just take affront at the notion that this commission has not had the support that they need. The ultimate thing, and what I think the public needs to understand, is Dan and I can tell them what the regulations say. We can tell them what we think is the correct interpretation, and what should be changed or not be changed depending on the commission's desire, wearing its planning hat. But at the end of the day, it's the commission's decision. So I just want the public to truly understand that the ultimate decision here is yours as a commission, that I am here for you, that Dan is here for you, and as he has done for months and months on end now, worked tirelessly to assist you in this process. And if there is anything you need from us that you have not gotten, then we should talk offline, because we will make sure that that gets rectified. And I just had to make that record, especially on Dan's behalf.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, there.
Oh yeah, Pete texted me. Sue, Dan, do you have the traffic study available to bring up or no? I mean, I have it here in paper form. One of the online questionnaires is asking about the traffic study, which, Pete, I'm sorry I'm communicating through you like this, but would Sue want me to send that to her tomorrow morning, or would that be sufficient for her?
We will ask and let you know.
Okay.
My
my
understanding of that document submitted by Joe was just he was providing backup to the calculations that he'd done. So
Yeah,
I
the
think,
traffic.
yeah, for the traffic. There were no new calculations to do. He was just showing the justification for the numbers he used that showed a reduced impact.
Okay. And if Sue would like, I'd be happy to share that with her tomorrow morning if you wanted to either get her email or her phone number, and I can reach out. I hope that's sufficient for you, Sue.
We have contact information for you. We'll get it to you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, unless anybody else in the public wanted to sign up for questions, that's all we have currently. Bob?
Okay, thank you. There are just two documents in our package that I just wanted to bring up for awareness. And the first one is from the Director of Public Works in Portland regarding the water pollution control facility, and the fact that this is nothing new, but the facility is operating at 50% capacity right now, and this development will push the processing to nearly 100% of the current capacity. So there is some work that needs to be done, maintenance that needs to be done to address the capacity issue. And I talked with Dan about it briefly, and I believe it's acknowledged that that work will be done prior to the completion of this project. Is that?
I don't know that for
Get that
sure,
right?
but my understanding is it needs to be done. I think at the bottom of that memo, it basically states that work would need to be done regardless of if this was approved or not. I believe that was how the Public Works Director, and I don't want to speak for him, but I believe he had some bolded lines at the bottom.
He did.
Yeah, and was his basic point was, yes, this work needs to be done regardless of if this modification was approved or not. That work would have to be done just because of the capacity situation and the maintenance work that needs to be done.
Do you want me to read that statement?
That's totally up to you. I mean, if you'd like, I mean, I'm not trying to
No,
speak
you
for him or,
summarized it.
okay.
You summarized it very well.
Okay.
I just-
Yeah, I'd read it. I just didn't want
Just
to.
didn't have it in front of you, and I was wondering if you wanted it read.
I'm living this right now.
So I guess, my feeling is that there should be some sort of a timeline
I mean, I could.
in place that would show it jiving with the timeline of this project.
So do you want me to go back to the Public Works Director and ask for more specificity, or I'm just not, because ultimately that's going to be a Board of Selectmen initiative.
Right.
And I understand, this would affect, whatever they do. But it sounds like per his memo, that initiative needs to be taken regardless of what happens here.
So the sentence, the way it's worded, this infrastructure repair maintenance will need to be made prior to the realization of the total additional flow for either design, meaning the 2017 approved or this proposed change. Prior to the realization of the total additional flow. To me,
Yes,
that doesn't state that it will be done.
Yeah, I don't think he can commit to that because that's not his decision and it's a funding thing. But from his memo, it's action that has to be taken for this project to be realized, and other projects that are approved and hopefully yet to be approved.
Again, in my opinion, we need some sort of acknowledgement from someone at the town level that realizes, other than the Director of Public Works, that this is work that needs to be done in conjunction with this project.
Okay, I will. I can see what I can come up with. I will do my best to try to get you some more clarification, some more certainty on that.
And I guess what would help too would be to understand what happens if we exceed capacity. What is the end result if we were to exceed the capacity of the plant?
Is that something you want before we vote? Is it something we should talk about?
I think we should discuss, but to me, it's an important consideration. Because if this gets done without the infrastructure improvements, then, what are the repercussions if we exceed capacity?
Yeah, so I'll ask Ryan. I could guess at some things, but I don't want to speculate at this time. And I have all the respect in the work for him. He's incredibly qualified. I mean, if you've seen the paving that's been done in the last couple of weeks, I'm sorry if it's a big part because of him. So I certainly will try to get an answer from him. I don't know if his pay grade is high enough. It might be a selectman question, so I may end up reaching out to them as well, because I just, he doesn't control the purse strings.
Right. Understood. And the second one is
Dan, can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
Just so you know, we have P. Wilsey who would like to speak about the sidewalk. I don't know if it's ready for.
Sure. Yeah. Bob is indicating that he's open to that comment.
Yeah, Pete Wilsey, 62 Jobs Pond Road, Portland. Full disclosure, I'm the building official and a deputy fire marshal. And about the sidewalk question, if we're talking about the sidewalks that are on Marlborough Street, that is all under the state DOT requirements, nothing with the town requirements. So the state is the one who's responsible for that.
Okay.
So just to circle back on the sewer question, we may be able to, Carrie's texting me. She got muted. Pete, can you unmute Carrie? She muted herself. And then, Carrie, do you want to just weigh in, or do you want me to reiterate what you had texted me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I was told not to mute myself, and I mistakenly did so. I apologize. But I heard the question about the sewer, and I think really what has to happen is there has to be a decision made on the proposed changes to the plans before any kind of real analysis. So it's going to depend on, obviously, how many units, how many bedrooms, all of the typical sewerage analysis. And so what I suggested to Dan was, if you were inclined to go ahead with this, make it conditional upon there being satisfactory approval on the sewerage question. So that could mean that, they'd have to come back if, it's determined that your system cannot support the number of units that are being proposed. But that's how I read that opinion and that comment, that it's going to require further analysis, and that further analysis probably is academic until some decisions are made as to what's going to be allowed.
Does that help? I still will try to get that information from Ryan. But would that be a direction that you would maybe entertain?
That would be helpful, but this document seems to make some assumptions about number of bedrooms or something, because someone provided the estimated
flows.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it must have been based on.
Yeah, and I can go back with him and have a conversation and make sure that we give you the best information possible.
Right. And as far as making it a condition of approval, I did think about that, but that's asking the applicant their approval would be a condition on someone else doing some action, that the town being.
Yeah, I understand that, and I could certainly try to work through language or different you know, sets of language that, you know, with Carrie that, you know, may be acceptable.
Let me be clear. It's not so much that as the point that as part of them seeking these modifications, part of that is getting approval, health department or sewer septic approval for what's being proposed. So what I'm suggesting is based on your regulations, that getting some kind of an inkling as to where you're headed so that the opinions can be, what do I want to say, better developed to guide your decision in this case might be worthwhile.
Yeah. All I was offering is that certainly that letter was in response to calculations submitted by CCA for the before and after, and the party at most risk is the one investing into a system they can't turn on. So certainly a condition of approval, I certainly agree with Carrie on that, that this is only effectuated with adequate sewer and water. And so from the standpoint that was the context for the letter, though, it was with the specific calculations. And I read the letter thinking, well, someone, and I ran into Ryan today on Perry, right, while we were walking up and down. I viewed it as, you know, a reminder to the town that this infrastructure improvement needed to be made in the near term, and that the SPA project alone, in addition to what's already approved, would trigger the need for it. That was how I read the last sentence. So from my perspective, I don't think it's a, you know, it's not a situation where we get another 50,000 gallons per day when an improvement's made. You go from, what is it, 500,000 to 1 million, right? I mean, it's one thing, and it's a giant amount of capacity and many, many years of growth for the town with that $4 million investment. But I took it that the staff was just saying, hey, don't forget about this thing we got to do soon. But yeah, it's triggered with or without this project, and so that's why we would ask to make it a condition of approval.
Would you be more comfortable with that? And I can get more specificity from Ryan again.
Yeah, because I have no idea how long this sort of a project improvement would take, you know, and how does it jive with the timelines?
It would be years, but, you know, I think if the consequences, if the town isn't ready, you know, they can't, you know, turn on the building, you know, until we are ready, you know, then there wouldn't be that impact necessarily on the town. But I will get, you know, a direct answer from.
But then again, the applicant's fate is in the town of Portland's hands, kind of.
I think that's what Dan was referring to with the risk.
Well, we sit here tonight with that same situation, and it just plays out in different ways, right? So the current constraint, right? Because I always found it interesting, the Historic Society should basically go faster, right? That's what I heard every time they came out and talked about stuff. And yet, you know, we have a process we have to go through, and it slows some time. But I would say this is standard fare, at least on our side, for the zoning commission to say, hey, listen, we're not in charge of running these other parts of the town, and it can't be built without the sewer and water, but we've looked at our part, and we're okay. That's typically the way this plays out, because if everybody were to come to you and say, hey, fix our sewer and water, you'd say, hey, that's not our job, not our responsibility. Please go talk to Ryan, right? And so I think in this case, it's reasonable to proceed knowing that, yes, the other Ryan, right? Well, we'll hear from me saying, how you doing on this? And the same way they'll hear from the Nordic Spa guys saying, how you doing on this? Because nobody can get financing for anything if the utilities aren't in place to open the piece, you know, the new development. So it's a very fundamental thing, and it's probably one of the first things that gets reviewed. But these buildings do take time. And so the thing we loop on is being able, and this is, I think, a good thing to pull full circle, our commercial leasing effectiveness, a lot of it comes down to when will this not be a construction zone? We're trying to get to a better answer on that all the time, and that will involve the start of phase 3. So from that perspective, it's all the sooner the better for us to get there, and we know we're taking risk together, right? The town has to do something for the sewer system, and we expect that they will, because they have the resources to do it, and so it's a shared fate type of thing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to qualify, one of the reasons that I'm suggesting this is there are ways, and again, I am no sewer expert, much less an expert on Portland's sewerage system, but I've been involved in so many projects where a lot of times the capacity issue really relates to time of day and the flows that are coming out, you know, during peak hours. I'm sure you've all heard that, right? Peak hours, like they ask you not to do your laundry, you know, at night or whatever. And so a lot of projects where there's been sort of this marginal concern about flow have had the development create, if you will, retaining basins where the sewerage gets compiled and held and then released at the non-peak flow times. And again, I don't know if that's even a possibility here, but it's worth looking into because, as Dan Bertram pointed out, they're at the construction phase, and if there's going to be a requirement like that, now is the time to know. And again, I don't think that the town's going to know until they're sure whether you're comfortable from a zoning standpoint as to the number of units and bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I'm not trying to impose any kind of a quote illegal condition on this, but I think it is something that is relevant and, as Dan pointed out, imperative actually to this development is to answer some of these questions up front. But I don't know that they can be answered until we really know what the development's going to be. So.
Okay. All right.
So I will work on that stuff, and then we can discuss that, I guess. Well, we did have one gentleman who wanted to come up, and we are running low on time and rebut one point. If you can just be very quick, we're going to give you that opportunity.
Is that okay? Last time, then sir, the building official just put on the record that 5 feet is not required. He is 100% wrong. If he carries a copy of the book, which I think in the future he should, under section 9.16.6 under land use development requirements, it's very clear under sidewalks along a public street, which happens to be a state road in that case, it's still a public street. Sidewalks will consist of 5 feet. Just so we're clear, you guys did approve it with 5 feet. It had 5 feet on the maps. 5 feet is required. Building inspector is incorrect. Thank you.
Okay. Just the second memo that I just wanted to mention real quickly was from the fire chief, and it's the impact on emergency services. So the additional proposed, so what has been approved, he is indicating, will be it's considered a significant impact to his department, the number of projected calls, and with the independent living scenario, it would be a minor increase, but it would still be considered an impact to their department based on the projected number of calls. So I think everybody's gotten that information. So. Okay.
So, how do you all want to proceed?
Open for discussion amongst commission members.
Well, we're waiting for that thing, that link to the.
Do do we need those things in order to vote?
So you have, you know, your options. You can keep it open, receive more information from the public, from the developer, from staff. You can close and then have discussion with input from staff based on your questions, but no more input from the developer or the public. And then based on, you know, what we give you, have your discussion, and then, you know, work on, you know, formulating your decision. We do have timeline to keep it open. I do have 2 dates. I believe one date, and speaking to some of you individually, is possible, where well, the other one is not. So you could keep it open if you'd like. You know, you're in the driver's seat. You do have clock remaining. Or if you feel like you've taken in enough input from the developer and the greater public, then you can get some answers to the questions that are still pending from staff, and then you know, to have your discussion and work towards a decision.
Maybe
Victoria? Oh, sorry.
I think maybe we should close the public hearing, at least start there.
Excuse me, I understand you all have thoughts and opinions, but this is them in discussion.
My issue is I really want as much information as I can on what the proposed healthcare institution is. I mean, that's really an issue for me.
Can we get that information if we close the public hearing? No.
Not from the developer.
No.
No.
No, that's the problem. And I would like to see what that is.
Yeah.
What it sounds like. Okay. So I believe after discussion, we will leave the public hearing open till the next available meeting date. And that would be awaiting some of the information from the developer and from staff.
So you want me to reach back out to the developer as well and try to get a little more specificity on the institutional side?
Grappling and what I've been hearing other people grappling with is what kind of a thing is it? Is it just a bunch of apartments that are somehow going to be provided, you know, saying that there are going to be services offered, or is it a real thing? And that's what I want to get out of looking at this legacy senior living community.
So you want to look at that? Well, I don't want to call it comparable, but you want to look at what was mentioned in earlier comments. So you'd like the developer to provide some more information on that one, so you can see something in the same sphere,
Yeah.
per se?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when this whole conversation first started, from my perspective, Dan, when it first started, we, you know, was, the first application was for the additional apartments. That got shot down. Then we came back, and we had pretty much what looked like the exact same thing, but all of a sudden it was an independent living thing with, you know, some areas carved out for independent living style things. But, I mean, there was no program, there was no whatever. It was just like, oh yeah, well, this is independent living. So I want to see what kind of program or what kind of thing this would be modeled after.
Okay. I certainly will reach out and try to get that information.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, you know, I'm hearing you loud and clear. I think what I'm hearing is you would like a concrete example of what they envision as the independent living facility at this location. Am I correct?
Well, yeah.
I think maybe even more than envision.
Okay, so you want a concrete, so you want to be able to say, this is what we're approving. This is the independent living facility healthcare institution we're approving because this is what you've committed to build. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Con-
but I
it
believe.
Okay, okay, I just think, from the developer standpoint, let's be clear what it is you want. And I commend you for being straightforward on that. And I'm sure that Mr. Bertram can provide that.
Well, I'm not.
Well, unfortunately, I think you're gonna have to be.
No, I mean, I'd like to, and we've certainly been trying to offer a curation of input. What I am concerned about is that Paul Fode's prior experience, we direct to some company he's no longer in, and it has more services than we can provide at this site, and we've just gone around in circles and done nothing. So my 2 cents is, I'll try to find something. I really needed this hearing to close for a variety of other reasons, and F will be stalled until we can resolve this, and that's in the narrative here. But I don't know what to do about it, other than try to address what the commission's looking for. I'm not trying to be whining too much, but I don't know that I have a specific example that says this is what I want to do here, because we've listed all these services. And I will say, I believe our presentation more than meets the requirements of the regs. We have a situation where the reg is not well defined, and we've done our best to say how will we flesh out that lack of definition. I mean, I'll try to do what the commission's looking for, but I don't know what the follow-up date is. Is there something for us to understand the feasibility of giving you something?
Yeah, the
in that
date
window?
would be September 12th.
So, Mr. Chairman, just, for the record, I think Mr. Bertram understands he can't expect this commission to just approve an idea. This is a huge project for this town. It's obviously been a huge project for years, as you know, Mr. Bertram. And they need some more clarity. And we've got a definition that says it's for a particular population that needs particular assistance.
We have
So,
floor plans, we have
everything-
uses, we
anything you
have
can
many
do
things detailed.
to provide them with a, and again, I think they'd be okay with some loosey-goosey language in there, but if you could at least describe some part of the independent living that does meet the definition that would require people who live there, or at least one of them.
Whose definition of independent living? Because there isn't one in the local regs.
That's, I think.
That's the point. That's the point. It's a healthcare.
No, but
plan.
we've provided the services that are typically provided in that type of living facility.
I think though that the general discomfort is that it still feels vague to us, and to push, I think if you were to push us to make a decision, we're not going, I mean.
I'm not pushing anybody to do anything. I'm just trying
No,
to
I
figure
know
out
you
how
want
to give you what you're asking for.
You want to close the meeting,
Well, I would argue to close the meeting, but for this input, that would be another option that you would have, so that we don't have another round of.
We can't.
Well,
we can't get input from you with the public hearing closed.
So again, I think
It
the
may
hang
not
up
be the town's
here
practice
is
sometimes.
the definition in the regulations is a healthcare institution designed for a particular population that requires assistance. And everything that I think has been presented so far, and I'm not a commission member, has been kind of loosey-goosey on that, there are many people, for all we know, 100% of the people could live there and not require any assistance with activities of daily living. So I think what the commission is asking for is more specificity as to how you are going to create a healthcare institution by, at a minimum, requiring and providing assistance to the residents, one or more, who live in each unit, of, actual healthcare services. We're not talking about getting your hair done. We're talking about activities of daily living. At least that's what I'm hearing from the commission. They can correct me right now if I'm wrong, but I think that has been their complaint for at least the last two hearings.
Yeah, I think you've done the assessment right about what the commission is asking for. But I think on the other hand, you've got to think from the applicant's perspective, putting services in black and white, saying we're going to do A, B, and C, and then something changes a year from now and he's out of zoning compliance. I think that's the difficulty. That's the
No,
rea- that's the
I
reason
think
for
you're
the
misunderstanding what
intention
I'm
of
saying,
vacancy.
Mr. Chairman. I don't mean to be disrespectful. But I do think that assisted living is separately defined from independent living. And assisted living does require, that the residents require some assistance with activities of daily living, which is generally dressing, bathing, cooking, that kind of thing. And so, and maybe the commission feels differently about the definition. And if they do, then they should speak up now. But I think their big concern is that there's nothing here that says that the developer is going to require the people who move in there to actually need help, as opposed to have it be selective. And maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Oh, no, that's on purpose, Carrie, because that's exactly what we want. If somebody wants the services as an insurance policy, as opposed to my doctor told me I must go live there, we want that to be their option because they're part of the qualifying population. I don't think that that's an unusual thing for independent living, and I think what I would like to do, and if I can, just to save everybody some time, because there's no sense our wrapping up without kind of clear expectations on both sides.
Exactly.
If I can try to show what we're looking to capture with independent living, which we believe requires on-site services and has a population that fits your definition of healthcare institution, I can give a lot of information about independent living, if that helps, because I think that's something that we can flesh out, right? Because that's a thing. It is an industry. And so we can do that. We just don't want to say, please make your decision about what we'll do here based on what Paul Foti used to do in New York, right, that informs certain things. Because I'll tell you, he was saying, oh, this is great. It'll be $5,000, $6,000 a month, right, to live there. And I said, we don't need to offer all of that because then it becomes cost prohibitive for people. There's a middle ground, and that's what independent living generally is providing, and that's what we're looking to do. So I think I would like to, if I may, propose that we better clarify the term independent living broadly. And then if we can find some way, because I think we can tie how independent living with that definition fits within the healthcare institution definition, and then I think that's sufficient for this application. But I'm trying to have us not have us look at some facility that has a lot more services than we ever intend to be able to offer, and then we never got anywhere with the approval because now we're not going to do the rooftop restaurant. We don't even want to go after that, right? We're not looking to do a convalescent home.
So I don't want to stifle conversation and debate, but we've kind of hit our time cap.
All right.
So
But the idea is when we're leaving a thing open where we're supposed to come back and provide something, and I've said
So again, I will try to work on behalf of the commission to try to work with you to try to come up with something that will try to satisfy some of the questions that they have.
Well, and I will.
I think that's the best we can do. Yeah. So
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry we can't hash
Okay,
that
but
out a little better.
is there any feedback on highlighting the independent living definition? I mean, that we can try to punch up. Does that help, or does that not help?
Well, I mean, based on what you just said, Dan, it's kind of like you can give us the link to this guy's thing, but it's really not applicable. That's kind of what I just heard.
What I'm saying is that parts of that portfolio are more assisted living and convalescent care, but not all of it. So there's an independent living thing. There's not, but I guess there's not a one-to-one thing. I can't say, here's the facility I want to build at Building A. That's
Okay.
true.
I'm
I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I'm also not trying to waste we have a lot of people who come out every time.
No, I understand that.
We're not trying to waste everyone's time.
So I don't think that's the commission's intention.
No,
but-
nor mine,
I'm
nor
gonna
mine.
say, I don't need that link. What I just heard is that it's not necessarily going to correlate, so I don't wanna waste anybody's time. So scratch
If
what
I may, Mr. Chairman, I think, Dan, we're missing the forest for the trees. I think what the commission wants is for you to establish, because it's your use, how what you are proposing to do meets their regulation as defined in the regulations. I think
And
that's
that-
the concern, and I don't think anybody is saying you have to provide hair, or you have to provide laundry, or you have to provide transportation, but I think they need more specificity as to how what you are proposing will meet that definition. Am
No,
I
think that's fair,
correct?
Carrie, and I'm not the best resource on that. I think I put Dave, Dan, and Carrie all together, and we see what we can do, and please leave the hearing open for that exercise to run out, and we'll do our best. I
Yeah.
can assure you all will do our best. I just wanted to kind of,
What I think might help is if you, and I can talk to you about this after, is if we tie some of the services to the floor plan.
Sure.
So that you can see, this is the service offered, this is where the on-site staff will work that service.
right,
That
and so
may
long
help.
as long as that can be moved around, right, when we actually build the building, but
Well,
it's addressing things.
Yeah, I don't think so if you have 2 healthcare rooms, if you move those somewhere else.
Yeah, that's all I mean. I'm just
So,
talking
but I
about-
think it would help the commission if you could tie some of these things to the building and show how these services will function within the floor print or floor plan of the building. Would that help you? So that you can see that there are some of these services tied to the building?
What I just heard is, those things are on the floor plan, and I see them on the floor plan. Some of those things are on the, but I just heard, but they could change. It's like.
So-
It wouldn't help, none of this would help me.
Okay.
Just to
Okay.
just to say, I don't, personally.
Okay, so again, we can't really take any more comment.
Quickly, before we run
Can I
out of
just-
time, would the two of you please tell Mr. Bertram what would help you?
Can I just respond? There is precedent for this kind of a situation in Connecticut. I mean, there's several cases that involve this very issue where is it required by, the state, is it licensed, is it not? And there's several where there were no state licenses in play, and the cases acknowledge that this is a fluid, there's extra testimony in the Groton case and one in Greenwich where they talk about assisted living being continuum and the independent living being a continuum. So there's really, and you do have a very kind of open-ended provision in your regulations, and I think what we're trying to do is build something from that, but I think the idea that it has to be licensed or it has to be this or that, it's going to be, and it does, these cases do talk about hair and transportation and having on-site medical, and I think what Dan's trying to do is say, listen, this is our menu, this is what we're going to have. He's saying we're going to have these things to start with. So you're going to get what you're looking for, but as the chairman said, there needs to be some level of flexibility built in because you don't want to have an empty, if nobody's using the hair and who's going to come cut the hair if nobody wants to use it? So.
I still would like the commission members to tell you precisely what would help them, because I feel like we're talking past each other.
I think we should just wrap this up at this point. Continue it in September.
It's totally up to you.
Yeah. So we'll continue the public hearing to the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll read the motion. Motion to continue public hearing for application 23-17, 69 Marlborough Street, request for special permit modification, application property BRT DeMarco PPP LLC, map 19, lot 68, zone B2, B3, and TCBD. May I have a second to the motion?
Seconded.
Okay, we'll vote. Victoria, this is on continuing the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay, Chantel, Rob? Aye. Jen?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Any opposed? There would be none. So the public hearing is continued. And then may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
Seconded.
Second. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed, say no. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.